Chapter 181. Few against many. Now that the situation had escalated to this, Jian Qin knew that aside from a body search, there was no other way they would believe him. If they searched him, they would look in his space belt, and that could not be allowed to happen. Excluding the 2 Class 5 monster cores lying peacefully within, if they were to discover his space ring, Class 4 monster cores, and the large amount of purple coins, then the hearts of everyone here would harbor wicked thoughts. Jian Qin knew that hiding anything was useless at this point. Although there were many people here, he was still not afraid. He took a look around himself, with so many strong people that could easily capture him releasing such a strong amount of qi. He began to laugh. Since everyone has figured it out, I don't need to hide it anymore. You are correct. The Class 5 monster cores are on my body. But I only have these 2 monster cores. How does everyone here plan to share the monster cores with so many people? Jian Chen's words caused everyone present to grow hesitant. The Class 5 magical beasts were precious, but the Class 5 monster cores were undoubtedly even more precious. No one was willing to give them up so easily. They knew in their hearts as well that there were only 2 Class 5 monster cores, and there were at least 10 different powers here. Each side was a major power in their respective area with very little gaps between them all. So splitting the 2 monster cores among them would be a huge problem. In a moment, the atmosphere around Jian Chen had become strange. Everyone's eyes began to turn cold as every single person who had been festive a moment ago suddenly gained a killing intent. However, this atmosphere didn't last long before an elderly voice broke the silence. Sire Wu Yun, the issue of how to split the monster cores is something that we'll naturally discuss later. There is no need for you to worry about it. For now, just bring out the Class 5 monster cores. Jian Chen turned towards the one that spoke, only to see a relatively short white-robed elder. He only reached up to Jian Chen's chest, and his face was full of wrinkles. But beneath those wrinkles lay eyes that shone brightly. The elder's voice was relatively calm, but the meaning behind his words carried some ill intent. Jian Chen coldly laughed as he replied, "Elder, I apologize, but I will keep these 2 Class 5 monster core. They aren't for sale." Jian Chen emphasized the last sentence extremely strongly with hesitation, leaving no room for further discussion. The moment everyone heard that Jian Chen wasn't going to sell the monster cores, everyone's expressions suddenly changed, and looked at Jian Chen with cold gazes. Quite a few people didn't even bother to conceal their strong killing intents. If it weren't for the fact that over 10 powers were simultaneously targeting the Class 5 monster cores, making the situation more complicated, these people probably wouldn't have bothered speaking to Jian Chen politely. They would have taken the initiative to take them by force ages ago. Spending money to purchase the Class 5 monster cores wasn't their original intention at all. Honorable Wu Yun, those 2 Class 5 monster cores will only bring you trouble if they remain in your possession, and may even be the cause of your death. You had better choose carefully. A golden-robed, refined-looking youth who looked to be around 30 years old said. This man was from the Mutian clan. That's correct, Sire Wu Yun. It wouldn't be proper for the Class 5 monster cores to remain in your possession. You should sell them to us. A Jialua clan member said. Soon after that, every other clan began to demand for Jian Chen to sell the cores, but no one mentioned a price. Jian Chen knew all too well just how precious these Class 5 monster cores were. Since he had tens of thousands of purple coins in his space belt, he had no shortage of money. Thus, he had absolutely no desire to sell them. Jian Chen cupped his hands together in an apologetic manner. Gentlemen, I am truly sorry. This one won't be selling the monster cores. There are some important matters this one must attend to, so this one won't be accompanying everyone any longer. With that, Jian Chen turned to leave with a casual and carefree face, but he had long since prepared himself to be ready to strike at any second. Humph, you've refused to drink the toast, so drink the wine of punishment. Jian Chen's course of action had angered many of the men there, and instantly, those of the Saint Master level immediately charged toward Jian Chen in an attempt to seize him. The movements of these men were like the fuse to a fire. The very moment they charged at Jian Chen, people from each clan immediately followed suit. Some of the people charged at Jian Chen, while some were blocking the others trying to steal from Jian Chen. At this moment, everyone knew in their hearts that if they wanted a Class 5 monster core, the best way to obtain one would be to steal it from Jian Chen. Every single great Saint Master expert had already seen that Jian Chen's strength was only at the peak Saint Master level. To the clans, this type of strength could only be classified as not bad, so there was absolutely no need to worry about him. Seeing the people come at him, Jian Chen faintly sneered, and a killing intent flashed in his eyes. Despite these clansmen having strong power supporting them that shouldn't be provoked, if he were to let these men bully him without retaliating, then he wouldn't dare call himself Jian Chen. He was not a man who was afraid of getting involved in trouble. His silver light wind sword appeared instantly in his right hand as it flashed with a silver glow. In another instant, it flew lightning fast towards the people that charged at him. Because of the sword's extremely fast speed, those men that were only at the Saint Master level hadn't anticipated his sword coming at them with such blinding speed. They could barely catch a glimpse of the sword. By the time they were finally able to react, the light wind sword had already ruthlessly pierced their throats. Not a single person was able to evade it. After reaching the peak Saint Master level, Jian Chen's inner strength and essence had swiftly improved. Any Saint Master opponent, unless they had the Wind Saint force, would not be able to dodge his attacks. In the blink of an eye, a few Saint Master experts had died to Jian Chen's sword. With this sudden display of battle strength, those who had wanted to rob Jian Chen of his monster cores suddenly turned pale with fright before becoming even more vigilant. Carefully holding their saint weapons in front of them, they continued to slowly approach Jian Chen. Even after killing those few men, Jian Chen continued to move forward with his course of action. His feet stepped across the ground with the speed of a demon as he disappeared from sight. The next time he reappeared, he was already 3 meters ahead of where he used to be, and was running toward the furthest person who wanted to steal from him. Chapter 182. No fear. Following the twinkling light of Jian Chen's sword, 3 of the people in the back of the incoming group instantly had their throats stabbed with the sharp tip of the sword. At the same time, the other men near Jian Chen's figure started to wave their saint weapons with a strong amount of saint force as they slashed at him. Even with the saint weapons slashing at him, Jian Chen didn't spare them a single glance. Almost as if he had eyes on the back of his head, he slanted his body slightly so that the weapons would just miss him. Ding! Not a single one of the saint weapons had hit Jian Chen. Because their target was Jian Chen, each saint weapon collided against each other in mid-air and echoed in a small symphony of metal sounds. As the numerous saint weapons all collided against each other, the amount of energy could be seen spiraling into the air. Jian Chen's eyes flashed dangerously as he took advantage of the stagnated saint weapons. In a flash, the light wind sword emitted a hazy glow that enshrouded everyone nearby. The saint weapon shined with light, and with the trail of sword chi following the tip, it resembled the scythe of the god of death. With each stroke, the blade flew at the throat of each person and landed a fatal blow that spilled blood from their wounds. In a short moment that wasn't even long enough to make one full breath, around 10 more Saint Masters had died by Jian Chen's hands. Another flash of killing intent could be seen in Jian Chen's eyes as the light wind sword glowed silver once more and the amount of sword chi intensified. Just as Jian Chen was about to continue to kill, a voice suddenly called out, "Stay your hand." Upon that, everyone that was charging at Jian Chen suddenly stopped. At the same time, the person who Jian Chen had just stabbed in the throat fell to the floor. What a fast sword. That sword is so fucking fast. Within the group were many astounded men. Among them were many Saint Masters who could see Jian Chen's sword. However, even then, they were astounded by the lightning speed Jian Chen had displayed. They all knew that against this fast of a sword, they would need to be extra prudent, otherwise they risked losing their lives. At this point, the few great Saint Masters who were looking down on Jian Chen now had a different opinion of him. Now they saw him as an opponent of an equal standing. In this short moment, aside from those Saint Masters on the floor, every other Saint Master's face grayed as they grew serious. In that short instant, they could only see the hazy white glow of Jian Chen's sword and not the death of their comrades. Jian Chen's right hand held his sword as he stood over the bodies with blood dripping down the tip. He stared coldly at everyone around him and said, "If you wish to steal from me, you'll find that it won't be easy. At the very least, I will make you all pay a heavy price for it." Jian Chen's words didn't cause any peak Saint Master to feel frantic at all. Within this 100-man group, there were many great Saint Master experts, so they did not believe in the delirious statement coming from Jian Chen. Although the words of Jian Chen did seem a little delusional, not a single person had said anything in response. Even the great Saint Masters had been speechless, for those Saint Masters lying down at Jian Chen's feet were proof of his strength. Pa pa pa, standing on the rooftop, an elder began to clap with a faint smile on his face. "Sire Wu Yun is indeed skillful. To think I would be able to see such a sight. How admirable! Truly admirable." Jian Chen returned the smile but did not reply to him. Everyone, Do you still wish to rob me of my things? As Jian Chen finished speaking, a middle-aged man with a dark expression spoke. Humph, don't think that because you have some strength you can put everyone else beneath you. Wu Yun, although you've killed a few of my Yulon clan members, I will show you that without giving those monster cores, you will not leave this area alive. Sire Wu Yun, even though our Mutian clan also had some deaths to you, they were the outstanding members of the clan and were favored by the clan leader. If you do not hand over compensation today, even we will have a hard time quelling this. Our clan leader's wrath is not an easy thing to accept. Hearing these two men talk, everyone else saw it as a stroke of good luck. No one felt the need to retreat despite Jian Chen's strength surprising them. Although they still felt that they needed to keep up a deathly serious vigilance. After all, Class 5 monster cores were too alluring to any person. Right now, the only problem was that there were too many parties involved and there were only 2 Class 5 monster cores, making it impossible to share. Despite everyone being aware of Jian Chen's strength, no one was afraid of the consequences. Jian Chen's glare intensified in danger as he understood that another fight was unavoidable. With a cold laugh he said, "So it's like this. Then let me give you your compensation." The light wind sword exploded with a silver glow as the sword chi assimilated into the surrounding air of the men 10 meters away. Everyone immediately felt a sharp stinging sensation in their skin, almost as if a multitude of sharp swords were pressing against their skin. Jian Chen's feet stamped across the ground as he glided with the speed of a demon. The 10 meters separating him and the men in front of him were gone in an instant as he arrived right in front of the Yulon clan group. Brandishing his light wind sword, he used his sword chi to enshroud the group within his sword chi. The Yulon clan were already a group of people Jian Chen disliked, so they would be the first people he would eliminate. "Everyone be careful!" The leader of the Yulon clan cried out. In an instant a sword appeared in his hands. Even within the emptiness that was the sword chi, he waved his sword and delivered a downward stroke. Ding! A loud sound filled the air as a slender-looking sword suddenly appeared within the sword chi and clashed against the sword. Immediately an intense shockwave flew from the 2 saint weapons in a visible arc and smashed violently against the 2 sides of the street. Suddenly, the walls of stone began to shake before a layer of dust shook and flew into the air. When the 2 saint weapons collided, Jian Chen immediately recalled his weapon and twirled around on the ground with an extremely fast speed. In a moment, he had dodged the second stroke of the man. The entire Yulon clan had already prepared themselves to face off against the speedy Jian Chen. Standing in front of everyone else were hardened men with saint force emanating from their hands to form their saint weapons before slashing at Jian Chen with it. Just then, a few milliseconds after the saint weapons were swung, a silver ray of light flashed before they could even react and stabbed into their throats. Chapter 183. 1 against 3. The light wind sword was still moving extremely fast. The silver glow had become a streak of light that made it hard to distinguish the blade. Great saint masters would have to be careful when dealing with it, while a saint master would find this blade fatal. The light wind sword wreaked havoc as each Yulon clansman was completely powerless to do anything before his throat was slashed, cutting the main artery in their neck. Saint masters only saw a streak of light before they felt a sharp pain at their throats. Following that, each one of them began to choke and fall to the ground. Jian Chen continued to move in between each Yulon clan member as his light wind sword continued to move around with sword chi enshrouding it. Within the group, each clansman felt a sharp pain at their throats before falling to the ground. Wherever Jian Chen moved, people would fall, and within that group of saint masters, very few escaped his wrath. Within the time it took to take 2 deep breaths, Jian Chen had already killed 20 men from the Yulon clan group. Since his sword techniques were very fast and accurate, Jian Chen's killing potential was tremendous. For those who only had the same level of strength as Jian Chen, it was guaranteed that the first strike would be fatal. In the time it took for the Yulon clan's great saint masters to reach the front lines, they saw 20 of their men die. They could only glare and gnash their teeth in anger before they reached him. Those saint masters who died may have only been the middle-ranking members of the clan, but they had brought a total of 50 people. For almost half of their group to be gone within 2 deep breaths, this was an incomparably cruel event for them. "You seek death. Wu Yun, don't think you can escape alive." The elder and middle-aged man leaped down from the rooftop with a snarl, as they charged toward Jian Chen. Their saint weapons pulsed with a strong saint force that vibrated against everyone's ears as they slashed through the air toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen and the middle-aged man crossed swords. The middle-aged man with red eyes snarled and pushed against Jian Chen. Three great saint masters. Feeling the intense energy of three saint weapon users, Jian Chen's face revealed a cold smile. If he were still at the primary saint master level, then three great saint masters would have given him a tremendous amount of trouble. It was a shame for them that Jian Chen had reached the peak saint master level, which was a world away from the primary level. These three great saint masters could be fought with his strength as long as they didn't have an attribute or some sort of strong battle skill. Een! The light wind sword, encased in light, stabbed forward with an ear-splitting sound. In an instant, Jian Chen had already stabbed 10 times, intercepting the 3 incoming saint weapons, causing a series of metallic sounds. Those 10 strokes smashed against the 3 saint weapons like a torrent. Although they saw the amount of power put behind each one of the 10 strokes, the owners of each saint weapon weren't worried. A large amount of saint force exploded from their weapons and reinforced their attacks' downward momentum, which were focused on Jian Chen. Even though he was up against 3 great saint masters as a saint master, he wasn't afraid at all. Instead, his fighting strength was at an all-time high. The light wind sword disappeared in a blur once more as he clashed against the 3 saint weapons. Although Jian Chen could dodge the blows, he had wanted to verify his own strength against the 3 great saint masters. After all, he had finally reached the peak saint master level. And this was the first battle where he was up against multiple great saint masters. With his own eyes, he wanted to find out his limits. The slim light wind sword clashed once more with the saint weapons, releasing a large amount of saint force that was disproportionate to its size. The clash of saint force rippled throughout the area and crashed against the buildings surrounding them again. Immediately, the stone walls began to grow cracks, like cobwebs, that spread further and further out. Long before they had begun fighting, the civilians within the buildings had already evacuated from them, so they weren't afraid of involving any innocent bystanders. The streets that previously had hundreds of people had all been evacuated, allowing the fighters a wide open space to fight. The people not involved in the fighting were astounded. They saw Jian Chen, a saint master, able to fight on equal grounds with 3 great saint masters. Not a single one of them believed what they saw. This Wu Yun is truly complex. To only be a peak saint master yet have this much fighting strength? He is truly strong, and his sword strokes are incomparably fast yet accurate. His sword has already slashed twice or thrice, but each movement is very smooth, like water. There is not a single wasted movement, and each sword stroke flows into the next seamlessly with absolutely no space in his movement. AI, just based on fighting experience, he is not lacking in the slightest. An elder spoke with some admiration. It would seem that the Wu Yun's experiences with life or death battles number way more than ours, otherwise, there would be no way for him to have such a refined fighting experience. Fighting experience isn't something that can be taught and learned, but only experienced by walking the line between life and death. This is something that can only be comprehended by the fierce hammer of experience. The most important detail is the speed of his sword. It is far too fast to be created by experience. Could it be a special type of battle skill? Upon hearing those 2 words, everyone's eyes began to shine. Battle skills were very precious on the Tianyuan continent as well as being very rare. The influential powers gathered here didn't even have a single low-class battle skill. Even if they did, only the core of the clan members would be able to have the chance to learn it. These 2 words had overwhelming temptation, much more than that of a silly class 5 monster core. This sword style that Wu Yun uses must definitely be a profound battle skill. Otherwise he would not be able to contend against a great saint master and wouldn't be so fast. In that short moment, everyone in the crowd had approved to this explanation. In their eyes, aside from a battle skill, there was no other explanation for Jian Chen's speed or strength. Just thinking about if Jian Chen had a battle skill caused everyone to have a burning glow within their eyes. Battle skills were a thing that every cultivator drooled over. As long as one was a cultivator, there was no way to resist the allure of having a battle skill. Chapter 184. Battle skill? At this moment, many great saint masters had become very lively. The blood within their bodies was boiling with excitement at the mere mention of a battle skill. Many of them were anxious to just charge at Jian Chen in order to rob him of this battle skill. Even though every single person had that urging thought, no one had decided to make a move. No one there was an idiot. Seeing Jian Chen fight with 3 great saint masters on even footing, they all knew that Jian Chen's strength was not as easy as they previously thought. Right now, everyone was waiting for the great saint masters from the Yulan clan to use up Jian Chen's saint force. The Saint Force was the energy one needed to have to fight. In the case that the amount of Saint Force consumed was too much, then it would impact one's fighting strength. By that point, everyone could easily rob Jian Chen. Jian Chen and the three great Saint Masters continued to fight for the time it took to boil a cup of tea. With each second, Jian Chen met blow for blow against his opponents without dodging a single attack from them. While on the other side, the three great Saint Masters from the Yulan clan grew more and more fearful. They had already been shocked beyond belief at first, but they hadn't thought that a peak Saint Master would be able to go against three great Saint Masters at the same time with no change in expression. What was most frightening was that this peak Saint Master was able to go blow for blow against them without any drawbacks. As the four continued to fight, Jian Chen had already determined his own strength against the three as they continued to try to coordinate themselves against him. His body would constantly dodge the Saint weapons, and with a step forward, he would stab his light wind sword, which let out an ear-piercing sound as it flew at the great Saint Masters. This sword stroke had caused those great Saint Masters to feel extremely shocked. From the eyes of these three great Saint Masters, this one sword stroke was the fastest one yet. In a flash, the tip of the light wind sword had already approached the throat of one of them. The elder who the light wind sword was about to pierce grew serious. In this short of a distance, the chances of him being able to dodge the attack were very low. In this moment between life and death, the elder wasn't frantic. With an explosive shout, a large amount of Saint Force burst out from his body and wrapped around him. Another wave of Saint Force rippled and obstructed the light wind sword for only the smallest of moments, but it was enough for the elder to give him the chance to twist his upper body to the side. The explosive strength of a great Saint Master could not be belittled at all. The moment the ripple of energy made contact with the light wind sword, the tip of its sword slowly managed to break through it before continuing on toward the elder's throat. However, because of that wave of energy, the speed of the sword was much slower than before. The light wind sword approached the elder's neck once more. Even as the elder turned his body, the incredibly sharp sword Qi had left a small line of blood on his neck. Elder Ling, move quickly. At the same time, the two other great Saint Masters by his side cried out angrily as they slashed at Jian Chen with their Saint weapons in order to divert Jian Chen's attention away from the other elder. Jian Chen snorted. After confirming his newly refined strength, he was no longer playing around with these elders. Deciding that he needed to resolve this issue quickly, he began to try with all of his efforts to accomplish this. Dodging the two blades coming at him, he stabbed out once more with a speed that wasn't inferior at all to the previous strike. The next elder from the Yulan clan dodged Jian Chen's strike with a desperate maneuver, but before he could regain his footing, Jian Chen struck out like a python once more. PC. The light wind sword flashed with a silver glow as the tip of the sword had easily pierced into the elder's throat. With his throat pierced straight through, the light wind sword was stained with the elder's dark red blood that slowly dripped down to the handle of the sword. The second strike wasn't anticipated at all, so before the elder could react, he had his throat stabbed. The sword was moving far too fast and the distance between the two was tiny, so after dodging the first strike, the second strike had warmly greeted him in the throat. Elder Ling. Ling Badong. Seeing the sword pierce into the elder's throat, the other two great Saint Masters from the Yulan clan cried out in horror and disbelief. Neither of the two had thought that a peak Saint Master would be able to handle three great Saint Masters with ease and then kill one of them. Wu Yun, I'll kill you. Don't think about leaving this place alive, Wu Yun. The two people gnashed their teeth with fury as they glared at Jian Chen. Almost as if they were dripping blood from their eyes, they wished that their gazes would be enough to chop Jian Chen up into 1,000 pieces. Clenching their Saint weapons, they charged at Jian Chen. The surrounding people looked on with shock etched into their faces. Not only was Jian Chen facing against three great Saint Masters with no disadvantage, Jian Chen had even killed one of them. This show of strength was absolutely unbelievable, causing many people to think that they had somehow entered some sort of dream and not the real world. Battle skill. This is definitely a battle skill. A battle skill like this was somehow able to let a peak Saint Master to kill a great Saint Master. There is absolutely no way for this to not be a strong battle skill. No matter what price we have to pay, we must obtain this battle skill. Within the crowd, a loud shout came calling out. Everyone began to attribute Jian Chen's kill to the use of a battle skill. By now, the emotions of each person's eye couldn't be concealed as even their bodies began to shake in excitement. In the case that the battle skill became theirs, then if they were to perfect it, how strong would they become? Een! A metallic sound broke through the air as the light wind sword transformed into another ray of light that enshrouded the remaining Yulan clan members with its sword Qi. Ding 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 ding. A symphony of sounds could be heard as the light wind sword and the two other saint weapons clashed against each other at rapid speeds. Unlike the previous exchanges, Jian Chen's sword was much faster than before and was filled with a killing intent. So after 5 or 6 successful blocks, both great saint masters were utterly flustered. The sword coming at them was far too fast, and the frequency too much to handle. One strike came after another in an endless torrent that linked into one another seamlessly as if the heavens had decreed it so. Chapter 185. Escape. Jian Chen's sword was getting faster and faster, increasing the amount of pressure both Yulon clan members felt. For two great saint masters to be pushed into such a situation like this, it was truly miserable. So, the light wind sword became a silver light that flew at a terrifying speed towards the middle-aged man's neck. It instantly pierced straight through. In just a small moment, another great saint master had died by Jian Chen's sword. The remaining great saint master was left with a shocked face. With two people, they had just barely managed to fight Jian Chen on even ground, and had even fallen to being at a disadvantage. Now that his companion had died, based on the strength that Jian Chen had displayed, he alone was definitely not an opponent for Jian Chen. If he really did try to go against Jian Chen by himself, he'd probably just die even faster. With that thought, the remaining great saint master elder suddenly grew incomparably pale. But he wasn't stupid, and before Jian Chen could attack him, he cried out, "Everyone, not only does Wu Yun have a Class 5 monster core, but he also has a high-leveled battle skill. Any one of us alone won't be able to kill him. Rather, we'll be killed by him. If we want to obtain the Class 5 monster core and the battle skill, we should quickly join hands and bring him down together." The words the elder said were solely to save his own life, but they weren't without reason either. After all, Jian Chen had already fought against 3 great saint masters by himself before quickly killing 2 of them. Everyone had witnessed this with their own eyes. Charge! Together, we will take that battle skill. Wu Yun's strength is too strong. Even 2 to 3 great saint masters didn't have much chance of winning. We should take advantage of the fact that we currently have many people, and kill him first, since his power is much more powerful than any ours. The elder's words had quickly gained approval from everyone there. Soon, 7 to 8 great saint masters pulled out their saint weapons and charged at Jian Chen. Jian Chen's expression changed. Although he didn't feel that going against 3 great saint masters was strenuous, there were currently a dozen clans with 2 or 3 great saint masters. If they fought together, even he wouldn't be able to handle that. Jian Chen didn't have much time to think about it, since 7 to 8 great saint masters had already reached him. With a roar, their saint force enforced saint weapons simultaneously slashed at him. Although these men hadn't coordinated together much before, it was clear that these men had a strong amount of fighting experience. With each of their saint weapons, they easily blocked off Jian Chen's escape routes. Jian Chen's face hardened further. As he looked at the 8 great saint masters, he could feel a great amount of pressure on him. With a quick wave of his right arm, the after images of his light wind sword instantly filled the air. Ding 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 ding, the sounds of metal hitting metal could be heard once more as in that small moment, the light wind sword collided with the opposing saint weapons more than 10 times. It looked like the light wind sword had blocked all the weapons, offsetting them from their original positions. Jian Chen's body swayed, and he instantly flew at another person with his light wind sword, aiming straight at the man's throat. The man had just swung down his sword and hadn't gotten a chance to retract it. Since he had just expended energy and had yet to recover it, he wasn't able to evade the lightning-fast sword. PC. The light wind sword immediately bore straight through his throat. Feeling the sharp sting of pain in his throat, the middle-aged man went into shock, and he couldn't breathe. A feeling of disbelief, as well as a powerful dizziness, began to spread through his head. Death. Have I died? Has my life really ended in such a way like this? To think that I would die by the hands of a saint master. In his final moments of life, the middle-aged man was still unable to believe it. He was a majestic great saint master, but in the end, he had fallen to a mere saint master. As the light wind sword was pulled out from his neck, the man slowly fell to the ground. As his life gradually reached an end, his eyes remained wide open as he died with remaining grievance. Lord! A green-robed, skinny, middle-aged man standing on the top of the roof stared down at the skinny man on the ground. His expression changed as he cried out with shock, and he leaped down from the roof. In a flash, he arrived at the man's side. Lord, Lord! The The green-robed man crouched down and cried out the dead man's name anxiously. But the man was already completely dead, so no matter how much the green-robed man cried, he wouldn't get a reply. Not too far away, another middle-aged man and 6 other black-robed elders stood on top of a building and watched the distant battle. "City Lord, are we not going to go down to prevent this situation? After all, Phoenix City belongs to us," an elder said calmly. A white-robed, middle-aged man shook his head as he spoke in a somewhat helpless tone. "It won't do us any good to obstruct this. Although this is Phoenix City, our territory, there are not only many clans from other cities with peak strength gathered over there, but also 3 of our own Phoenix City clans. If we were to rashly do something, we might offend many people. But this man named Wu Yun, his strength is fairly strong. At the peak Saint Master level, he has already killed a few great Saint Masters. This is a very rare sight on the Tianyuan continent." Another middle-aged man next to the City Lord sighed. The City Lord nodded and said, "Correct. I don't know where this Wu Yun came from, but his strength is very strong, especially his sword. It is so fast that even great Saint Masters need to be careful. But there are still a good amount of great Saint Masters and over 100 Saint Masters there. Even though this Wu Yun is not weak at all, even he will have trouble escaping from this. If he were to have the strength of a great Saint Master as well, then I would wager he would be able to escape from here," an elder said in a low voice. Nearby, 2 gray-robed men stood upright on top of another building as they observed the battle. The 2-man group was comprised of a middle-aged man and an elderly man. This elder was the one who had spent 100,000 purple coins to purchase the body of the quick cloud beast at the auction. "Young lord, it is up to you if we should help him or not. After all, this quick cloud beast was provided by him, so it could be said that he helped us." The gray-robed elder spoke to the other man. The middle-aged man shook his head. "I don't see the need for it. This Wu Yun is very complex. Although he is young, he has the strength of a peak Saint Master with a great amount of fighting strength. Even those great Saint Masters were powerless against this man. This kind of potential is rarely seen on the Tianyuan continent. Besides, his movements aren't bad. If he wanted to run away, then he has a good chance of succeeding. To him, this might just be a test. After all, if he only cultivated quickly, it would only bring him so far. One must undergo a trial of blood and fire in order to truly be tested. Only when one walks the line in between life or death can one truly be called a genius. Otherwise, it would disgrace the very word of a genius." The elder nodded his head in approval. "The young lord is truly vicious. This elder cannot compare." The middle-aged man let out a small smile as he spoke gently. "Elder Yun, it would be best to go now. We've found the quick cloud beast, so our mission is over. We should go back with that." The 2 leaped off the roof and with a few flashes, disappeared from sight. On the other side, Jian Chen and a few great Saint Masters were engaged in an intense battle. 7 to 8 great Saint Masters were surrounding him, making it impossible for Jian Chen be as relaxed as he had been during his fight against the first 3 great Saint Masters. With each passing moment, Jian Chen was earning a new wound on his body. A few of the opposing great Saint Masters had small traces of blood on their throats. If they hadn't dodged the light wind sword at the most crucial moment and had comrades supporting them, they would have long since turned into corpses. Jian Chen's eyes flashed as he quickly looked around him. He knew that his utilization of his sword had made everyone think that he was in possession of a battle skill. Because of the preciousness of battle skills on the Tianyuan continent, the enemies definitely would not relinquish their hold on him easily. Although he had already killed a few great Saint Masters, there were still a dozen more strong clans with their own great Saint Masters. If these great Saint Masters were to truly cooperate with each other, then there would be no way at all for Jian Chen to deal with them with his current level of strength. With that thought, Jian Chen didn't hesitate anymore. After defending a few more attacks aimed at him, his entire body soared into the sky as he quickly made his escape. Chapter 186. Yet another escape. He wants to escape. Chase him. Don't let him get away. The battle skill is on him. There's no way he can get away from us. Hurry up and chase him. Just as Jian Chen leaped up, everyone began to shout. A high-class battle skill was something even Earth Saint Masters would drool over. Even many Earth Saint Masters didn't have a single battle skill, let alone a great Saint Master. Wu Yun, stay still. Where do you plan to run off to? Hand over the battle skill or die. Following a mix of passionate and furious roars, the great Saint Masters on the roofs and the ground all attacked Jian Chen. If Jian Chen were to continue to stay here and battle, then perhaps he wouldn't attract the attacks of everyone at once. However, now that he had started to run, no one would allow him to do so with ease. There were at least 30 Saint Masters attacking Jian Chen. Their saint weapons surged with saint force as they filled the narrow space with incomparable power that would shock anyone. Right above Jian Chen's head were a single axe, 2 swords, a cleaver, and even a machete that came crashing down with a terrifying amount of pressure. With Jian Chen in midair, there was nowhere he could go to escape from this assault. He couldn't change his direction. Helplessly, he clenched the light wind sword and began to swing quickly to form a web of sword strokes in front of him. Ding 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 ding. The sounds of an amalgamate of saint weapons colliding together could be heard as the light wind sword clashed fiercely with all of them. Although it had blocked the offensive weapons, the opposing saint weapons had an unbelievably strong amount of force that had placed such a large amount of pressure on Jian Chen, and he was forced to fall back down to the ground. Jian Chen's legs tapped onto the ground gently before he continued to run like a bullet with no hesitation, far away from the enemies. Just as Jian Chen began to run, 2 more great Saint Masters lashed out with their saint weapons. Charging toward Jian Chen, their eyes flashed fiercely as the saint force flowed into their saint weapons and prepared to make contact with Jian Chen with an ear-splitting sound. A battle skill was just far too alluring. Jian Chen's strength was far beyond what anyone had expected. He had killed 2 great Saint Masters without even giving them a chance to defend. Thus, every single person from the powerful clans had mutually agreed without communicating that they would join hands to deal with Jian Chen together. Jian Chen's figure continued to run forward as the 2 saint weapons flew down on him. His feet became a blur as he instantly sped up and unfathomably crossed 2/3 meter in that moment, perfectly evading the incoming attacks. Een! The light wind sword stabbed forward with lightning-fast speed once more as it emitted an ear-splitting sound while it cut through the air. At the same time, it carried a strong amount of power that would break through any defense as it headed toward one of the great Saint Master's throat. PC. Jian Chen's eyes frosted over with an intense killing intent that seemed as if it was almost capable of destroying souls. This made anyone with a weaker amount of strength afraid to make eye contact with him. Just as the light wind sword immediately stabbed through the great Saint Master, it was pulled out just as fast as it came. It then immediately stabbed towards the other great Saint Master by his side. Seeing how his companion had been killed, the remaining great Saint Master couldn't help but grow pale with shock. Although he knew Jian Chen was superbly strong, he didn't think that it would be to such an extent. Even a great Saint Master like his friend was killed by a mere Saint Master. Seeing Jian Chen's sword that resembled the scythe of the god of death come at him, the great Saint Master's expression suddenly changed. Recalling his saint weapon to himself, he tried to block the sword coming at his throat. Ding! Even though the great Saint Master was able to block the fatal blow, the light wind sword still carried enough force to push the man back involuntarily. Before the man could regain his footing, another ear-splitting sound could be heard as a silver glow of light stabbed through his throat. By the time the glow had dissipated, the only thing to be seen was a thin and slender, silver sword already dyed with a red tint. The impaled great Saint Master's eyes widened. In his final moments of being alive, a single thought spiraled through his head. What a fast sword! At that moment, another 30 great Saint Masters quickly began to charge at Jian Chen from all directions. The few already close to Jian Chen had already started to slash their saint weapons at him. Jian Chen's eyes quickly swept around him as he quickly blocked a few saint weapons that were impossible to evade with his sword. In another instant, he quickly charged into a group of Saint Masters. If he wanted to charge out of the encirclement formed by the 30 great Saint Masters, he'd have to break through by ground, because there were hundreds of people protecting the ground. If he managed to mingle with the crowd, even those great Saint Masters would have difficulty trying to obstruct him. If he escaped by air, he'd probably be surrounded by great Saint Masters again as soon as he flew upwards. With a flash, Jian Chen slipped into the ground. The light wind sword turned into a silver light that flashed through the air as it pierced through the throats of the enemies. Against these Saint Master experts, Jian Chen's absolute strength would spare no one. Quickly, Jian Chen charged forwards with the crowd of people. Any place he passed through, members of major clans on both sides of him would fall to the ground. Quick, run! The group of people grew frightened and scattered in all directions like cats on a hot tin roof. Bastard! Wu Yun, I won't forgive you. I'll smash you into 1,000 pieces. Seeing the people that had died from Jian Chen's hands, a few great Saint Masters flew into rages from frustration. They then began to charge into the crowd to chase after Jian Chen. However, since there were people on their own sides within this dense crowd, the great Saint Masters felt like they had an arm and leg tied behind their backs since they couldn't kill indiscriminately like Jian Chen was doing. "Everyone disperse!" A person immediately cried out, but it was unnecessary. Just as Jian Chen had rushed into a group of Saint Masters, they all ran for their lives in all directions. But because there was 100 people crowded within a narrow street, it was impossible for all of them to escape from him within a short period of time. With Jian Chen's incomparably fast sword, only a few of the further people could narrowly escape from his path as the unlucky ones were all slain. Within a few breaths' time, Jian Chen had dyed the streets red with blood. He rushed out of the crowd of hundreds of people, and without showing any signs of stopping, immediately began to run off into the distance. Behind him, the 30 remaining great Saint Masters pursued him relentlessly, unwilling to let him go. Chapter 187. Wind attribute Great Saint Master. Seeing Jian Chen get further and further away, the city lord of Phoenix City let out a breath of air. He's as good as gone. If he were to stay around and toss these people about, I don't know what our Phoenix City would end up looking like. The other men by the lord's side silently nodded their heads. Although Phoenix City was a Class 2 city under their control, they could only control a few 100,000 soldiers. This group here wasn't just a single clan, it was a temporary alliance of a few dozen powerful clans that could easily be provoked. If they were to band together, then even an army of 100,000 would feel a headache when dealing with them. I didn't think this Wu Yun would have a battle skill. What a shock this is. Even the various Earth Saint Masters on the Tian Yuan continent don't have such a battle skill. An elder spoke with an envious admiration. This Wu Yun has a great amount of luck. Not only did he have 2 Class 5 magical beast bodies, but he also had a battle skill. Who knows what else he may have. This Wu Yun is also very complicated. I hope that he has no major power backing him, otherwise the clans chasing him will suffer miserably. AI, every man is innocent, but envying another's treasure is a crime. The city lord let out another breath as he spoke out another command. Let every guardsman know, this group is not to be obstructed. Yes. Jian Chen quickly ran through the streets toward the city gates. Phoenix City occupied a large area with many hidden places. Even the number of spies was great. To stay behind in Phoenix City would not be a wise decision, and so the only remaining solution was to escape from the city and run into the countryside. Therefore Jian Chen would need to continue to run for a little longer. The various wounds on Jian Chen's body continued to bleed and stained his clothes red. At that moment he didn't have time to deal with his injuries, he just needed to hurry up and escape from the city. Jian Chen dashed through the streets violently without stopping for a single moment. With each leap he flew from the ground to the buildings in rapid succession. Already his speed had far surpassed that of a low-leveled magical beast and the other low-leveled magical beasts meant for transporting people on the streets. Although he was already traveling at a fast pace, the group of great Saint Masters weren't any slower than Jian Chen. They weren't fully aware of how Jian Chen could move so fast, but they could make up for it with their superior saint force. Wu Yun, you cannot escape. If you don't wish to die, then stop and wait for us obediently. A great Saint Master called out from behind with a loud shout. Although there were a few others shouting, this one man had been even louder. His voice could easily shatter the eardrums of anyone with sensitive hearing that was in close proximity to him. The 30 great Saint Masters relentlessly chased Jian Chen through various streets, their shouts attracting the curiosity of many people. Each person began to reach a grinding halt as they turned to look in the direction of the commotion. That would be the group of 30 great Saint Masters. A single middle-aged man stared at the fleeing figure of Jian Chen before muttering, "This Wu Yun is incredibly fast. If the situation continues on like this, then our chances of catching up to him in a short moment will be nearly impossible." After that, he turned his head to look at the man next to him. "Third eldest, among our group, I'm afraid only you are able to catch up to Wu Yun. We can't allow him to run away, so it would be best if you went to obstruct him." The one called third eldest was wearing a red-colored robe and looked neither fat or skinny. Although he was in his middle ages, his outward appearance made him look rather young. In fact, the one called third eldest was rather handsome and very confident. Hearing that, third eldest concentrated on the retreating figure ahead of them before recalling the memories of when Jian Chen had killed a few great Saint Masters with a small amount of hesitation in his eyes. Second brother, while this Wu Yun has the strength of a peak Saint Master, he has a battle skill. Did you not see how he had just killed a few great Saint Masters? I am but one person, and that will not be enough to fight him. Just thinking about how Jian Chen had slaughtered those great Saint Masters made the third eldest heart beat wildly. Third eldest, although you only have the strength of a primary great Saint Master, don't forget that you have the Wind Saint Force. You have the superiority in speed. Even though Wu Yun outranks the rest of us with speed so that we have to proceed with caution, you are the antithesis to him. The middle-aged man said. Second brother, although I have the Wind Saint Force, my familiarity with the winds is rather low. If Jian Chen's speed were to be compared to mine, then he would undoubtedly be faster than me. The third eldest said unconfidently. The middle-aged man let out a sigh. His third eldest was extremely afraid of dying, so he spoke unhappily. Third eldest, can you not see how so many of us are chasing this Wu Yun? All you need to do is to distract him for some time. If Wu Yun gets trapped by us once more, then he will find it difficult to escape. Then, after we finish, you will be the first one to take Wu Yun's space belt and then you will make your escape. With your speed combined with your total strength, no one here will be able to catch up to you. Even with those words, the third eldest still hesitated for some time before replying. Fine then. Second brother, I will go block Wu Yun, but you all must immediately come to help me. Don't worry, third eldest. With this many people, we'll be able to take that battle skill, so we will have to rely on you for everything else. The middle-aged man slapped the third eldest on the shoulder with some excitement. In his mind, if this plan were to succeed, then the battle skill and the 2 Class 5 monster cores would end up in his hands. Jian Chen had already been running through the streets using all his strength, making his speed comparable to a horse beast. In a short moment, he had already traveled 40 kilometers of road, making the gates to the city loom ever so closely. At that moment, from the front of the group of great Saint Masters, a cyan-colored light suddenly shone everywhere as the figure of a man was suddenly enveloped by it. His speed abruptly intensified as he instantly flew far beyond the group toward Jian Chen. The strange event that had happened behind him was not lost on Jian Chen. Turning his head back to look, his face suddenly changed. How unfortunate, there was a man with wind-attributed saint force within their group. How troublesome this will be. Chapter 188. To fight and escape, a person with wind saint force would hold the superiority in speed. If one were a wind-attributed great Saint Master, even an Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to compare with their speed. While Jian Chen himself wasn't an ordinary person, he was only a peak Saint Master, which was already lower than a peak Great Saint Master by a large gap. If he were to compare speed against a wind-attributed person, then there would be no way to escape. In less than a second, the wind-attributed Great Saint Master flew toward Jian Chen with a large gust of wind covering and forming into the shape of a large sword. Instantly, that cyan-colored sword had reached the back of Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. There was 500 meters separating him and the group behind him until this man came forward. Before the rest of the Great Saint Masters could reach him, he would need to quickly take care of this wind-attributed person. If he didn't, then there would be no doubt that he would be stuck in between them all once more, making another escape unlikely. The light wind sword instantaneously appeared in his right hand as he instantly shot a sharp amount of sword chi toward that man. Ding! When the layer of wind-attributed saint force made contact with a sharp amount of sword chi, the amount of saint force coming from both sides instantly repelled each other in such a way that was visible to everyone. The shockwave rippled through to the buildings and caused spiderwebs of cracks to appear. Even the stalls selling monster cores suffered from the wave of energy that had been created. Oh my, there's a fight happening. A cyan-colored light, that's the sign of a wind-attributed person. Hurry up and hide, these two are experts. In the case someone gets injured, it'll be one of us. The guardsmen will be here quickly. The two men battled and quickly caused the street they were on to become disarrayed. A few of the weaker men instantly tried to move further away to avoid getting hurt. Jian Chen's light wind sword stabbed forward quickly with a hazy glow to distort the path of the weapon. In this small moment, it was imperative that he killed this wind-attributed man quickly. Unfortunately, this wind-attributed Great Saint Master wasn't as easy to kill as the other Great Saint Masters. Even under the flurry of stabs, this Great Saint Master was exceptionally difficult to fight against. Although he wasn't fighting as flustered as the rest, Jian Chen was still fighting at an extremely fast speed either way. Even more so, this wind-attributed Great Saint Master was only trying to stall Jian Chen, and so with the man trying to defend himself so adamantly, Jian Chen found it difficult to kill him. With this delay, The large group of great Saint Masters had almost caught up to him. Seeing how rapidly the group was coming toward him, Jian Chen bit his lips and gave up trying to fight. His legs turned around and dashed toward the city gates once more. Once Jian Chen began to run, the wind-attributed man immediately began to chase after him so that Jian Chen wouldn't have a good chance to escape. With this, it was easy for Jian Chen to get encircled once more. Wu Yun, let's see you try and escape from us this time. The group of great Saint Masters weren't from the same side, but for the sake of capturing Jian Chen, they had all joined forces. Not only were there some men on the ground, but some were standing on top of the roofs in case Jian Chen tried to run through the sky again. Seeing the amount of great Saint Masters circling him, Jian Chen's face took on a serious expression as he prepared to defend himself against the multitudes of men by each sides of the streets before charging into a restaurant. Shwa shwa shwa. The figures of a few men began to flicker as a few more great Saint Masters followed him into the restaurant while the rest of the men stayed outside. Within the restaurant, a slender blade suddenly flew toward those that entered the moment they crossed into the building. Careful! Although someone had realized the incoming attack, the sword was coming at an extremely fast speed. Adding on to the fact that everyone had expected Jian Chen to try and continue to escape instead of ambushing them inside the restaurant, not a single one of them was able to react or dodge. PC. The light wind sword stabbed into the throat of another great Saint Master, killing him. Then, Jian Chen pulled out the sword and immediately began to battle with the others once more. Bang! 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 The tables within the restaurant were knocked around and became extremely damaged. Since right now wasn't a time for patrons to eat, the restaurant was almost absolutely empty. Aside from a few waitresses, the rest of the patrons were scattered about randomly. When they saw the restaurant get invaded and Jian Chen ambush the great Saint Masters, each of them instantly stood up to get far away. Jian Chen started to fight with another great Saint Master by the narrow doorway. Since it wasn't as hectic as when a group of men were all fighting him at the same time, Jian Chen found this to be much easier. Honored uncles, please take your fight outside. This restaurant can't handle a fight like this. A flowery uniformed person wailed with a face full of shock. It was a waitress who had ran and hid under a nearby table. Boom bang! Just then, another 2 explosions could be heard as the wall to the restaurant suddenly collapsed and a group of great Saint Masters began to flow into the building with the intent to kill. Jian Chen became startled at this as the restaurant suddenly gained another few great Saint Masters, making the numbers equate to 10 men that entered with him. If he were to continue fighting, he would be straining himself. Ceasing his fighting, his feet stomped on the ground before propelling himself through to the wooden floor of the second story. Chase him! The 10 great Saint Masters immediately followed Jian Chen through the hole he made to the second story. As they arrived on the second story, before they could even take in the scenery around them, a minute sword suddenly stabbed through their necks from behind. Then with another flash of silver, the sword stabbed through the front of another man's throat. In an instant, Jian Chen had capitalized on the opportunity to kill 2 people. In the following moment, the others finally realized what was happening as they saw the 2 men fall to the ground with cold sweat. Their hearts began to feel a secret amount of joy as they thought themselves lucky that Jian Chen hadn't chosen them as his initial targets. Otherwise, it could have been them lying on the floor instead of those 2. Right now I've only about half of my Saint force left. If I were to go all out right now, it won't take too long for me to run out. I need to hold on until I can escape, but I have to avoid fighting with them as well. If I run out of energy while trying to escape, then today will be the day I die. Jian Chen planned to himself mentally. Now that everyone was prepared for an attack, he had lost the element of surprise. So if he were to try a sneak attack again, it wouldn't work as well as the first time. They would only fall for it once, not twice. With that, Jian Chen immediately broke out of the restaurant into the courtyard before dashing toward a nearby well. Chapter 189. Escaping from a critical situation. Just as Jian Chen reached the entrance, a white-colored glow of light suddenly burst from the second story towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen's sword arm stabbed into the white object. The item suddenly exploded upon contact and captured Jian Chen within its shroud. Jian Chen wasn't worried at all and allowed the white powder to fall upon him. With his 1000 immunity despite its incomplete state, he wasn't afraid of any toxin or poison. Jian Chen raised an arm above the stone slab before slamming down onto it with a bang. The slab broke into multiple pieces, revealing the entrance beneath it. With no hesitation, Jian Chen immediately jumped into it. Within the courtyard of the restaurant, More men began to arrive from every direction as they gathered at one spot, totaling 27 men. From the 30 great Saint Masters, only 27 of them were left. What a cunning person, now that he has jumped in there, we've no way to reach him. Staring at the opening, an elder spoke out with an ugly expression. All of the wells within Phoenix City are interconnected. Every single one of these wells all lead to an underground cavern which stores water where he could escape into any direction he wanted to. Spoke a dark-skinned man. He was a part of the Haiming clan, which was one of the Phoenix City clans, so this was a topic that he was rather familiar with. Then what do we do now? Should we follow him down the well? An elder spoke with a hesitant voice. I would think not. Wu Yun is a peak Saint Master with a strength that you've personally witnessed. We've had 3 great Saint Masters fight together and that still wasn't enough to defeat him. If we were to go down this well, then our ability to fight as a group would be greatly hindered as well as our line of sight being deeply affected. So entering this well would not only make it impossible for us to grab him, but we would lose many men that way. A middle-aged man said. He wore expensive-looking clothes with a golden outline, signifying him as a noble. A sharp-nosed man let out a long sigh as he spoke out reluctantly. Then are we just going to let him go? He has a battle skill, a high-leveled one at that. That battle skill was enough to let a single peak Saint Master fight the entirety of our group without us being able to capture him. Right, to meet a weak person with a strong battle skill, this is a rare 1 in 1,000 event. We will never come across such an easy target again. In any case, we would be able to understand the secrets behind this battle skill for our clan's benefits after we take it along with his 2 Class 5 monster cores. Although a monster core is precious, compared to a battle skill, the difference between the two is too high. Such a profound battle skill is something even the wealthy cannot buy. A white-robed middle-aged man said. It was the representative from the Mutian clan. That's correct, this battle skill is something we shouldn't let go so easily. But Wu Yun has already escaped from us and could be anywhere within Phoenix City. With how large this city is, we're searching within an endless ocean of people, making this matter extremely complicated. In my eyes, we should take advantage of the fact that he hasn't gone far yet and chase after him. The terrain below the well isn't clear, and the visibility is near non-existent. We won't even know where Wu Yun might be waiting to ambush us, so if we take the bait, it'll be us taking the danger. The group quickly descended into a storm of chattering. This battle skill was something everyone coveted and desperately wanted. Although everyone knew that while they were greedy for it, they were also afraid of dying. They were afraid of what they might encounter down in the well after all. None of them were idiots. Despite the rarity, if they threw away their lives to attain it, then they wouldn't be able to use this profound skill in death. Seeing everyone talk among each other, a plain-robed elder let out a faint smile as he raised his left hand to reveal a finger-wide serpent coiled around the arms within his robe. The elder caressed the snake gently on the head and said confidently, "No need to worry, Wu Yun will not escape from us." The reservoir underneath Phoenix City was a natural one that supplied water for each and every well within the city. At this moment within this very reservoir, a man was swimming through the water streams with the grace of a fish in water. This man was the Jian Chen who was relieved to have escaped from the restaurant. Now that he was underground, the entire area was pitch black. Adding onto the water that blocked his line of sight, Jian Chen was nearly blind. According to the mental map in his head, Jian Chen was quickly moving in a certain direction in the pitch dark which he estimated to be around a few meters away. During the days he was in Phoenix City, Jian Chen had studied the environment of the city. His plan to escape had long since been thought out in case he needed to escape from a situation like the one he was just in. Taking use of this plan, he was able to escape into any direction by using the connected paths from the wells, so that he could reappear within different parts of the city. With the fact that Jian Chen was a peak Saint Master now, the duration in which he could hold his breath was now longer and even more simple than eating dinner. Therefore, holding his breath within the water was not a problem for him. Jian Chen remained within the reservoir for nearly 6 hours before reaching an area 20 kilometers away from where he had started. Facing another direction, he began to swim toward a broad passageway and continued up toward the surface. With his hair still wet with water, Jian Chen took in another breath of air. After spending 6 hours of constant swimming, he was a bit tired. After catching his breath, Jian Chen slapped both palms onto the surface of the water and shot out of the pool like a bullet. Flying in midair, Jian Chen landed down onto the side of the stream as he tried to shake himself loose of any remaining water droplets. Immediately, he began to look around himself carefully. The area he had surfaced in looked to be a small courtyard with clothes scattered about on poles everywhere. No matter where he looked, not a single person could be found. No one's here. Seems like this is the home of a small family. Jian Chen shook his hair dry. After cutting his hair with his sword, only a few inches remained. I've no idea what the situation is like now, but I'm afraid that the native powers here have already hired a few groups to search for me. The distance between here and the restaurant isn't that far, so I should leave immediately. Jian Chen's previous appearance had already been completely washed away in the reservoir below, returning his appearances to his original one. His wet hair had emphasized his already handsome face, adding on to his charm. Without hesitating, Jian Chen began to use his Saint Force to heat up his body and evaporate the water on it before changing clothes into a new set in his space belt. There was no time to clean his wounds other than to wrap them in some bandages. This was the home of someone else after all. There was no telling when the lord of the house would come back. If that lord were to discover a stranger in the back of his home, it would certainly bring a lot of trouble to him. To avoid such a situation, it would be best to leave immediately. After all the preparations were made and making sure no one was around, Jian Chen left the area and entered a small alleyway. From there, he entered a crowded street and figured out where he was geographically before heading toward the city gates. His current appearance wasn't that of Wu Yun, so Jian Chen wasn't worried at all that he would be caught. Chapter 190. 100-Mile Tracing Powder. I've heard there was a fight right outside the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. Who would ever be so outrageous to do this, I do not know, but they must be impatient to die. If they were to be caught by the guardsmen, then the penalty would be severe. That's right, I've heard that as well. It seems like there was a group of people attacking a single person. What do you guys know? I was actually there when it happened, let me tell you. Each one of those fighters were all experts with backgrounds so strong that even the city guards didn't dare obstruct them. While fighting, not a single guard came to stop the fight. Yes, I've heard that all of them were great saint masters against a single person. That man must be amazing to go against an entire group of great saint masters while killing a few and ultimately running away. For a man so amazing as him to escape an encirclement of great saint masters, could he be an earth saint master? Perhaps it was because the fight between Jian Chen and the great saint masters had been so spectacular that the news had traveled so fast. Jian Chen heard multiple people chatting about it. Jian Chen continued to walk toward the city gates while listening to the people talk, but not too long afterward, a large amount of energy suddenly flew out from behind. Feeling this strong wave of energy, Jian Chen stopped momentarily before turning his head to look back only to see a large group of people standing on the rooftops of the buildings next to him. Leaping down onto the ground in his direction, Jian Chen saw the familiar faces of some of the great saint masters who had tried to capture him earlier. Jian Chen's face shook slightly as he suddenly felt a chill go up his spine. What's going on? Could they have found me? Are they just passing through? Judging from their pace, they're not hurrying anywhere. Could they have really found me? No, that's not possible. My appearance isn't similar at all to Wu Yun. There's no way for them to find out it's me. There was a suspicious feeling within Jian Chen's heart. Right now, he and Wu Yun were two separate people with different faces. His body didn't have any visible wounds and he didn't look like Wu Yun at all. Even the more visible wounds were hidden by his new clothes on which no tears or holes could be seen. Perhaps they're not coming in my direction and have a different matter to take care of. Despite this situation, as long as I don't look frantic or suddenly start to run, I won't be found out. Jian Chen thought to himself. Trying to force himself into a calm state, he slowly began to walk toward the city gates once more, but his pace was just marginally faster than when he was originally walking. It was with great difficulty that he had escaped from the great saint masters, so he didn't wish to be caught again. In this brief moment, Jian Chen didn't waver for a single step and continued forward with a confident face. He wasn't Wu Yun anymore, he was Jian Chen. Quickly, the great saint masters vaulted over the buildings in the direction of Jian Chen without slowing down in the slightest. At this, Jian Chen's heart leapt to his throat, but these men fortunately didn't see his visible reaction. Suddenly, the moment an elder passed by Jian Chen, his face changed expressions abruptly as he turned his head to look at Jian Chen from within the crowd. "I've found him, he's over here, surround him quickly." Before he could even finish talking, another group of men suddenly fell down around Jian Chen within 5 meters in tight vigilance. Even though their opponent was merely a peak saint master, This great Saint Master Elder didn't dare to belittle him after personally witnessing how Jian Chen had killed many great Saint Masters. The other great Saint Masters ahead of the Elder immediately turned around and ran toward him to get into position, quickly surrounding Jian Chen. This sudden development stunned Jian Chen. His face darkened as he slowly cupped together his hands with a faint smile. "Fellow brothers, this one asks what meaning this is." Jian Chen's heart didn't think that his identity would have been found out so quickly, as he was extremely confident in his ability to disguise himself. His new appearance was no longer the 40-year-old man, and was completely different from the one he had used for Wu Yun. Even his hair had been meticulously trimmed so that it wasn't similar at all to Wu Yun. The 20 great Saint Masters looked at the clearly 20-year-old Jian Chen's appearance with some doubt. "Elder He Mu, isn't this the wrong person?" A white-robed middle-aged man said. "That's right, Elder He Mu, you must have found the wrong person. How is this Wu Yun?" Another white-robed man spoke. His voice was muffled as he was filled with doubt. The one called Elder He Mu stared at Jian Chen firmly with some doubt in his own eye. Secretly, he thought to himself, "Could I have found the wrong person?" As this thought flashed through his head, a small slender-looking snake suddenly came out from the Elder's robes. With its head held high, it began to spit out venom toward Jian Chen. At this, Elder He Mu looked surprised as he cried out at disbelief from seeing the reaction of his snake to a 20-year-old youth. "You are Wu Yun." Upon this shout, the other great Saint Masters each had a look of shock and disbelief as they tried to make the connection between Jian Chen and Wu Yun. "Elder He Mu, are you sure you didn't find the wrong person?" A red-robed elder tried to confirm. Elder He Mu didn't bother to answer the other elder and instead looked at Jian Chen with a sneer. "Wu Yun, this change in your appearance is truly massive. To a point that not a single one of us could recognize you. But no matter how much you change your appearance, you cannot escape my spirit snake's sense of smell." Jian Chen's face grew serious as he listened to the elder. The opposing side clearly had some secret method to identify him, so he wasn't able to avoid suspicion now. Hearing the confident Elder He Mu, the 20 great Saint Masters all felt extremely astonished, but they didn't delay any longer and took out their saint weapons while waiting for Jian Chen to make a move. Jian Chen looked around himself before asking Elder He Mu, "What did you use to find me?" Elder He Mu looked proud as he spoke. "There's no harm in telling you. When you first fought with us at the restaurant, I sprayed you with a special type of medicinal powder. With this spirit snake, it can easily detect that smell within 1,000 meters, so tracking you was easy." Jian Chen then realized his mistake. "Even after dropping into the water, I was unable to wash off this powder? Humph. You belittle my special 100-mile tracing powder. My special 100-mile tracing powder isn't something a little amount of water could easily wash away. If one does not use the special drug to bathe in beforehand, then it'll take a week for the powder to lose effect." Elder He Mu bragged. Chapter 191. No survivors, so it was like that. Jian Chen's expression grew dark as he listened to Elder He Mu. According to what Elder He Mu said, since his body had been sprayed with a 1,000-meter tracing powder, as long as he was within 100 miles of this Elder He Mu, it would be impossible for him to run away. With this, Jian Chen's eye gained a killing glow as he didn't spare any more time to talk. The light wind sword appeared in his right hand as he suddenly flew toward the elder to stab him. The elder had a grin on his face as he watched Jian Chen's sudden movement. He had long anticipated this explosive start and immediately revealed a meter-long scepter in his hand to block Jian Chen's sword. "Everyone forward. Be careful this time and don't let him get away again." Just as Jian Chen started to move, the other 20 great Saint Masters simultaneously bolted into action as they jumped at Jian Chen with their saint weapons ready to strike. The light wind sword exploded with sword chi as it enhanced the sharpness of the blade and enshrouded it in a hazy glow of light that masked its position. Next, the light wind sword disappeared in a flurry of shadows as a series of sword trials began to throw out sword chi everywhere. Bang! 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 The sounds of metal clashing could be heard as the amount of sword chi from Jian Chen's sword spread over the earth and kicked up a cloud of dust. From the 20 great saint masters that moved at him, 8 of them waved their saint weapons in an effort to slash through the cloud of dust. The other 12 carefully readied their weapons in case Jian Chen ran away again. Just as the 8 great saint weapons cut through the cloud of dust, suddenly, a silver glow of light came from within at an incredibly fast speed. It almost seemed as if it were flying. By itself, it flew around the 8 men before disappearing from sight, leaving behind a small trace of blood on each their necks. At the same time, the 8 great Saint Masters suddenly grew stiff.
The red line grew darker on their necks before all of a sudden a fountain of blood splurted out from their necks and they collapsed to the ground.
The silver glow of light disappeared back within the dust cloud as Jian Chen ignored those great Saint Masters and ran straight for Elder Himu. Een! The light wind sword carried a strong amount of sword chi that whistled while moving through the air. The tip of the sword emitted a strange sound as it stabbed toward Elder Himu. Elder Himu had already been expecting Jian Chen's attack, and so at the most crucial moment, the elder's face maintained an impassive expression as he flew backward and turned his body to the side to avoid damage. At the same time, the scepter came up to block the sword. Ding! The scepter and the light wind sword collided together with a loud crash. Following the collision, Jian Chen immediately slid the sword down the scepter and slashed horizontally at the elder. PC! The sharp tip of the light wind sword swiped against Himu's throat. Although he was a great Saint Master, under the might of Jian Chen's strength, he too had been killed. Suddenly, a large sword came from behind and slashed at Jian Chen's back. Jian Chen staggered a few steps forward from the sudden blow as a half-meter-long wound appeared on his back. A wave of blood violently surged from the wound and quickly stained his clothes a bloody red. Upon seeing the wound on Jian Chen, everyone's eyes brightened as they charged toward Jian Chen. Immediately a few of them flew toward Jian Chen with their saint weapons ready to slash at him. So you all wish to die? Then I will help accomplish that for you. Jian Chen's face grew fierce as he felt the wound on his back. Not only did this wound bring about a huge impact on his fighting strength, but there wasn't much of his saint force left. If he wanted to run, then he would have to reveal his final trump card. Suddenly, a strong amount of sword chi started to flow from his light wind sword as it left his hand and became a streak of silver light that smashed against the 3 saint weapons attacking him. Ding ding ding! 3 sounds of metal hitting metal rang in the air as the light wind sword sped through the air quickly and smashed against each of the saint weapons. Immediately, all 3 saint weapon owners were sent staggering backward with pale faces as they stared in shock at the floating saint weapon. Already, a small nick could be seen on their saint weapons. Although it was a small wound, these 3 men all felt that this attack had been immense. Their own saint weapons had even been damaged. Since the saint weapons were linked to their owners, they would be able to feel an immense amount of damage from their weapons. Show! The light wind sword shrieked as it traveled through the sky toward the men at the front with an inconceivable speed that couldn't be seen. Under the control of Jian Chen, the light wind sword dodged the saint weapons of the 20 men and struck at their throats. PCH! 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 In a single moment, there were 7 corpses with a single wound on their neck. At this, the remaining men all had a surprised look on their faces as they brandished their weapons in order to block Jian Chen's sword. Bastard! What kind of attack is this? How can a sword fly by itself at such a fast speed? Blocking another strike from the sword, a rapidly paling elder couldn't help but curse out loud as he clenched his saint weapon. Despite his attempts to block the sword, he had already received a few minute wounds. After seeing the light wind sword fly by itself in mid-air, everyone had a shocked expression on their faces as they watched this inconceivable event. Against Jian Chen's spirit sword, the other great saint masters didn't even have enough time to breathe before a few of them had quickly died. On the ground, there were already 20 victims who had died by a strike to the throat. At this moment, the remaining great saint masters were all frightened. Without any more care, they all began to quickly escape from Jian Chen at full speed. Among them was the Wind Saint Force Great Saint Master, who had enveloped himself in his cyan-colored Saint Force and quickly traversed 100 meters away. Show! Jian Chen didn't plan on letting them go. The light wind sword disappeared in a streak of light as it chased after the Wind Saint Force Great Saint Master. In the end, even he too fell victim to a slash to the throat. After killing him, the light wind sword immediately turned around and chased after the remaining people. The speed at which the light wind sword was moving was incomparably fast. The remaining great saint masters couldn't help but ultimately die by Jian Chen's sword. Of the 30 great saint masters, not a single one remained. Chapter 192. Meeting another strong enemy, the corpses of 20 great saint masters lay strewn across the ground, their blood dyeing the streets crimson. The surrounding people stared with wide eyes at the dim-eyed corpses and the bloody Jian Chen with shock. No one had expected to come across such a fight. Many of these observers were regular commoners, but they could easily tell that these 20 corpses used to be great saint masters. When these 20 great saint masters gathered, their unbelievable might had swept across Phoenix City.
But no one had thought that so many great Saint Masters would die in the hands of a single youth, who was not even over the age of 25, in a single moment.
If they hadn't witnessed this scene with their own eyes, they probably wouldn't have believed the situation no matter what. But despite what they had seen, many of them still couldn't believe it and thought it to be an illusion, rather than reality. The scene was just that hard to believe.
Jian Chen's eyes slowly wandered to the 20 bodies on the ground, his breathing still erratic.
After so many battles in such a short amount of time, his saint force had taken a huge loss, causing him to feel exhausted. Jian Chen knew that staying here wasn't wise. The Class 5 magical beast had attracted many people to Phoenix City, and made the situation very chaotic.
Although there were some people with decent strength on the surface, Jian Chen was more afraid that some mercenary groups and strong wayfarers target him from the dark.
After all, Jian Chen was heavily injured and was no longer in his peak state. In addition to the enticing allure of a Class 5 monster core and a battle skill, this chance could tempt anyone. Now that he had finished this test and killed multiple great Saint Masters with his spirit sword, his spirit had been greatly diminished to his current state. Right now, Phoenix City was even more dangerous than the countryside. Then, Jian Chen's eyes accidentally landed on the great Saint Master's space belts, and his eyes lit up. Immediately using the light wind sword to pick at the space belts, he quickly collected all of them from the corpses. But what made him happier was that while taking the space belts, he had discovered 3 space rings. It was not an exaggeration to say that space rings were even more precious and useful than space belts. Space rings in the Tianyuan continent were symbols of status and strength, unlike space belts. No matter how extravagant the space belt was, space belts were of an inferior grade and were incomparably weaker than a space ring. After the 20 space belts and the 3 space rings were collected, Jian Chen didn't waste any time on the remaining people still watching him, and immediately left the area. Seeing Jian Chen come toward them, the observers immediately awoke from their stupor and scrambled to get out of the way for Jian Chen to pass through. The light wind sword in Jian Chen's hand was still dripping with blood as he strode out of the crowd. His presence was so terrifying that anyone within his vicinity hurriedly scrambled away as far as possible. Despite Jian Chen's young appearance, nobody dared to underestimate him. It was only when Jian Chen arrived at a Class 1 magical beast mount that he stopped. Taking out a few purple coins, he handed it to the owner and spoke coldly, "Sell me your mount." Without even waiting for a response, he immediately jumped onto the magical beast and pulled at the reins, heading full speed toward the city gates. The owner of the Class 1 magical beast mount was only a Saint Master, but he had witnessed Jian Chen killing the 20 great Saint Masters. So when Jian Chen spoke rudely to him, he didn't dare speak arrogantly back. Even if Jian Chen hadn't paid him the amount a Class 1 magical beast was worth, the man wouldn't have dared to complain. Sitting on top of the mount, Jian Chen flew over the roads with a blinding speed that quickly took him to the base of the city gates. Jian Chen fortunately hadn't come across any obstructions along the way. Although there were many powerful clans within Phoenix City, there were also many strong mercenary groups and solo mercenaries that would want in on the items that Jian Chen possessed. A Class 5 monster core and a battle skill were treasures that were far too tempting to be ignored. However, after realizing that 30 great Saint Masters had met their deaths at the hands of this person, they felt as if a bucket of cold water had been dumped on their heads, and they immediately renounced their plans to fight him. In the distance, one of the guards on top of the city gate saw a bloody figure riding a Class 1 magical beast, and immediately cried out to his fellow guards. The city gates began to creak open to allow Jian Chen to exit, as they had already received orders from the city lord to do so. Within the heart of the city, the Lord of Phoenix City hoped that Jian Chen would be able to safely depart from the city. If Jian Chen were to stay here, he would ultimately attract the attention of many powerful clans that the city lord desperately didn't wish to offend. Seeing the city gates open, Jian Chen continued at his usual speed before finally rushing through the gates to the shock of everyone watching. The moment he left the city gates, Jian Chen let out a breath of air in relief. To him, the countryside was much safer, as he wouldn't come across a near infinite amount of harassment. Excluding the powers from Phoenix City, who knew how strong those from the countryside would be? Whether or not there was a high-leveled Earth Saint Master hiding in wait, after killing all those great Saint Masters, the powers he had offended would definitely not take this lying down. To stay in Phoenix City would mean to face off against a multitude of troubles. Hee, Sire Wu Yun has an amazing talent, and you're strong despite being so young. This must be the power of that battle skill. Despite Jian Chen's fast movements, an elderly voice could be heard speaking to Jian Chen from close by. Hearing that, Jian Chen's face paled as he turned his head to look behind. A figure was rapidly approaching him from 5 kilometers away at a speed much faster than Jian Chen's.
Damn it! Jian Chen's face grew even paler as he realized that, judging from the man's speed, his strength was probably much stronger than that of a great Saint Master.
Chapter 193. Confrontation with an Earth Saint Master. Sire, could it be that you are after my 2 Class 5 monster cores as well? Jian Chen's voice loudly echoed through the plains. Heh, while a Class 5 monster core is truly precious, I have no interest in it.
Wu Yun, I desire your battle skill. Give it to me, and I won't trouble you any more.
The elder called back to him from behind. His voice was loud and clear. In just the time it took to take 2 deep breaths, the elderly man, who was 5 kilometers behind Jian Chen, was now 4 kilometers behind him. Seeing the elder's terrifyingly fast speed, Jian Chen's face grew serious as he threw away his hesitation.
He leapt off of his mount and began to run.
Although this would use his saint force even faster, riding a magical beast was much slower than running. If he were to continue to ride the magical beast, then this elder would catch up to him eventually. Jian Chen continued to run at full speed despite feeling the intense burn of the wound on his back from earlier. As his heart twinged in pain, his muscles also throbbed, causing his face to grow even paler. On his forehead, droplets of sweat began to form. If it were just a simple slash on his back, Jian Chen wouldn't feel so anguished.
However, now that his body was moving so violently, the wound on his back was constantly being forced to tear and stretch, causing wave after wave of pain to test his nerves.
Jian Chen couldn't help but feel the pain from his back wounds as he ran forward as fast as possible.
Although he hadn't fought with this elder yet, he had a feeling that this man would be unprecedentedly dangerous.
The elder behind him was undoubtedly strong beyond belief. Seeing Jian Chen run even faster, the elder chasing him couldn't help but sneer. Wu Yun, you are only wasting your energy, you cannot escape me. With that, the elder began to speed up as well and flew closer to Jian Chen. 4 kilometers. 3 kilometers. 2 kilometers. The elder was unbelievably fast. In a short moment, he had shortened the distance from 5 kilometers to a single kilometer. Even with Jian Chen going as fast as he could, this was not enough to throw off the elder. With so much saint force being used to aid his escape, he was already at a critically low level.
Finally, the elder was less than 500 meters away from him. In the end, Jian Chen could only stop and turn around to confront the elder.
Seeing Jian Chen stop, the elder slowed down his pace as well, before stopping 20 meters away. His face still had a kind smile, but his eyes were full of a curious yet surprised color as he looked at Jian Chen. Ah, Wu Yun probably isn't your real name, but that is of no importance to me. However, being able to kill 30 great Saint Masters with only the strength of a peak Saint Master really astonished me. The elder's face had a small smile on it. Hearing the elder's kind voice, Jian Chen's brows furrowed. The sound of his voice was vaguely familiar, but he had no idea where he had heard it from. Then, a moment of realization flashed within Jian Chen's mind as he suddenly recalled a person.
He said in a low voice, "Elder, if my guess is correct, you are from the Harido clan in Lust City."
Jian Chen had a deep impression of the Harido clan, as they were one of the top 10 clans that had appeared within the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. The Harido clan was the clan that had purchased the first Class 5 magical beast body without being contested for it. In the end, the Harido clan had only spent 10,000 purple coins for a single magical beast body. From that moment, Jian Chen knew clearly that the Harido clan had a terrifying amount of power.
At the very least, even the clans far away from the Harido clan were afraid of the hegemon that was the Harido clan.
The elder nodded his head. That's correct. This old man is a part of the Harido clan. Wu Yun, I only desire the battle skill you have. The 2 Class 5 monster cores, I care not for. Seeing Jian Chen's eyes flash, the elder snorted and continued. Wu Yun, you should hand over the battle skill. This old man won't be as easy to deal with as those great Saint Masters. Against an Earth Saint Master, you have no hope of escaping from me with your peak Saint Master strength.
Earth Saint Master.
Hearing this, Jian Chen gasped.
Although he had guessed the elder's strength to be at the Earth Saint Master earlier, that had only been a guess. Now that the elder personally verified it, he could now state this to be a fact. This elder in front of him was truly an Earth Saint Master. Sucking in another breath, Jian Chen quickly calmed himself,
Senior, if I don't have a battle skill, would you believe me? The elder's smile suddenly froze as his eyes grew cold and a small amount of killing intent leaked out. Wu Yun, my patience has a limit. I don't have long to squabble with you, so hurry up and hand over the battle skill. Otherwise, I will force it out of you. With this, the elder's voice paused momentarily as a small sneer took control of his facial features. If you really don't have a battle skill on you, that makes no difference to me. You will come back with me to the Harito clan and write it down for me. You will also write about how you can control your saint weapon to fly in midair. Hearing the elder, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. There was no margin of leeway here. Unless he handed over a battle skill, this Earth Saint Master Elder would not let him leave this area. As it was now, only a fight to the death would be the best way of escaping this place with his life. Jian Chen's heart knew that even if this elder wanted to kill him, he wouldn't dare try to do so before obtaining the battle skill. This made Jian Chen feel truly helpless. He didn't have a battle skill at all. The others had only mistaken his law of Ziqing to be a battle skill. Having reached a decision, Jian Chen didn't hesitate any longer. His legs abruptly pushed off the ground, quickly sending his body flying backwards. Recognizing Jian Chen's actions, the elder had a face of disdain on it as he too simultaneously flew toward Jian Chen's direction, with both of his hands stretching out toward Jian Chen's neck. The light wind sword instantly appeared in Jian Chen's hand. Against this Earth Saint Master, Jian Chen couldn't hold back. He would have to use his hidden trump card, the Spirit Sword. The light wind sword became a silver flash of lightning. An ear-piercing shriek split through the air as it pierced towards the Earth Saint Master. Chapter 194. Falling from a cliff highlight above for chapter title, like I said, this old man will not be as easy as those great Saint Masters. Seeing the light wind sword fly at him, the elder's face sneered. His hands that were previously heading toward Jian Chen moved directions and slapped against the sword. Pa! The elder's palm slapped firmly against the sword, causing it to veer away 10 meters in a perpendicular direction. At the same time, the elder's face had an expression of shock as he looked at his palm only to see that the light wind sword had caused several cuts that filled his palm with blood. Seeing the injuries on his palm, the elder became distracted and had a look of disbelief. With another deep breath, he stared at Jian Chen with another curious look, but before he could say anything, the light wind sword that had been knocked away came flying back at the elder with a lightning-fast pace. The elder's face changed once more as he swayed his body to dodge 3 meters to the side. The light wind sword itself had merely stabbed through the position where he last was. Suddenly, the light wind sword immediately made a revolution as it passed by the elder and flew straight back at the elder's new position. The glare in the elder's eyes intensified as his hands filled with a blue-colored saint force as a hammer appeared. The steel hammer wasn't large. It was roughly the size of an adult human's chest. It was covered with blue-tipped barbs with a 2-foot handle that had a strange pattern engraved on it. The elder waved his hammer and smashed it against the light wind sword. Ding! The steel hammer smashed against the light wind sword with a tremendous force that caused the sword to fly far away with a large sound. At the same time, Jian Chen let out a small grunt from his throat as his already pale face lost even more color, resembling a piece of paper in whiteness. Wu Yun, I'll ask you one last time. Hand over the battle skill. The next time you fight me, I will not hold back. The elder glared firmly at Jian Chen as he spoke. In actuality, the elder wasn't sure if there really was a battle skill on Jian Chen. So in the beginning, he didn't dare try and kill Jian Chen since he knew that as long as Jian Chen was alive but wasn't willing to hand over the battle skill, he could still force him back to the clan where they could force it out of him. If he were to kill him, then there would be no chance of retrieving the battle skill. Jian Chen stared back at the elder and bit his lip with anger. Harito clan, I will remember this. Do you dare tell me your name? The elder sneered with disdain at Jian Chen's words. What? You still wish to seek revenge? Humph, for someone who hasn't even reached the great Saint Master level to want to take revenge on my Harito clan, you are an imbecile. To think you want to know my name, then there's no harm in telling you. Remember this old man is called Yen Kaiser. Yen Kaiser. I will remember this. Jian Chen spat venomously. Just as he finished speaking, the light wind sword finally came back straight toward the elder once more. Seeing that Jian Chen had no plans to hand over the battle skill, the glow in the elder's eyes grew cold as he finally lost his final shred of patience. The hammer in his hands exploded with a blue-colored saint force as he brought it down onto the light wind sword to smash it. Just as the light wind sword and the steel hammer were about to make contact,
The light wind sword's trajectory suddenly made an inconceivable turn, almost as if it was a python.
Avoiding the hammer, the light wind sword flew straight toward the elder's throat. At the same time, Jian Chen flew forward like a bullet shot out of a rifle as he continued to run away. Humph! An insignificant achievement. The elder sneered as he brought the hammer back to block the light wind sword.
He brought his entire body to the side half a meter and allowed himself to dodge the sword. In this small moment, Jian Chen had already moved 50 meters away before using his spirit to call the light wind sword back to his hand. Seeing Jian Chen already 50 meters away, the elder's eyes finally released a large amount of killing intent. A mere Saint Master was nothing more than a weak ant in comparison to an Earth Saint Master. A person who he couldn't be bothered to look at in the eye.
Seeing that this ant of a person was running away, this was a disgrace. When I capture you, you'll be begging to die. The elder cried out as he chased Jian Chen. The speed of an Earth Saint Master was faster than that of Jian Chen. In a short moment, 50 meters of distance had been shortened down to 20 meters. Then, Jian Chen threw the light wind sword in his hand back at the elder with a stunning speed. Regarding this attack of Jian Chen, the elder had the strength of an Earth Saint Master, but he still didn't dare disregard it anymore.
His body swayed to the side and dodged the sword, but with that action, his speed had been slowed briefly.
The light wind sword turned around in midair and shot straight at the elder once more.
The elder had a look of anger now. The steel hammer in his hand burst with saint force as he slammed the hammer down behind him to break the light wind sword.
The light wind sword changed directions once more to avoid the elder's blow.
Bang! The strength behind the elder's blow was tremendous, and since he was unable to recall the hammer, the weapon struck against the ground firmly. The accumulated saint force within the weapon exploded out and left a 2-meter-wide crater in the ground.
Jian Chen recalled his light wind sword and continued on. Afterward, Jian Chen would repeat this process.
As he ran forward, he would control his sword so that it would delay the elder's forward progress.
This continued for almost 2 hours up a large mountain, but ultimately, Jian Chen had no other option but to stop since he had reached the edge of a cliff. After this wild dash to escape along with using his spirit to delay the elder with his sword, Jian Chen was utterly exhausted.
If it were not for his tremendous willpower to support him, he would have long since collapsed.
After all, using the spirit sword consumed a large amount of his energy. Right now, Jian Chen's clothes were already wet with his sweat and the back with his blood. Because of this waste of spirit, Jian Chen was beginning to feel dizzy, almost as if he hadn't slept for a week. At the moment, he wanted nothing more but to sleep. Damn it all, this is a cliff. Forcing himself to stay upright, Jian Chen looked beyond the cliff with a heavy heart.
In his eyes, there was already a look of despair.
Death he was not afraid of. It was just that he didn't wish to die like this. Besides, in this world, he still had a mother he loved dearly and his 2 siblings that cared deeply for him. Changyang Hu and Changyang Mingyue.
Disgraceful being, you can die already.
At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out from behind him. Turning around, Jian Chen could only see the elder come straight at him with the steel hammer right about to collide with his back.
Bang!
Since Jian Chen was utterly exhausted, he had no energy to dodge the elder's blow. In the end, he could only be sent flying over the cliff and into the abyss below. Seeing Jian Chen disappear from sight, the elder's face suddenly became blank. The anger in his head suddenly cleared away as he gained clarity over his situation. At this moment, he had finally taken notice of the steep cliffside in front of him. There was a cliff here. I hit him down the cliff. It's over, my battle skill. Seeing the terrain below, the elder's expression turned remorseful. Chapter 195. Escaping from calamity, Jian Chen lifted a heavy eyelid, only to see the blurry figure over him start to clear up. The very first thing to register in his mind was the earthen color of a roof tile over his head. There was a crack on this tile and it had cobwebs with spiders crawling all over. They were enjoying the insects that had stumbled into their webs. Jian Chen ignored the movements of the spiders as he turned his head to look around himself. All he could see was the interior of the room he lay in with a few dark, shadowy spots. However, he could still make out the small arrangements in the room. The room was rather simple in terms of arrangements. Aside from the decades-old wooden table and stools, there was nothing else. On the floor, if it wasn't covered by slabs of marble, there were patches of earth to make up the rest of the ground. What is this place? Seeing the environment he was in, Jian Chen grew suspicious despite being so tired.
Immediately becoming aware of the pain in his head, the memories of what had just happened to him before he fell immediately came crashing into his mind like a tidal wave.
Jian Chen could remember that he had been sent flying down the cliff by the Earth Saint Master. He landed in a body of water below and lost consciousness there. But what happened after, he had no idea. I didn't die, so I must have been saved by someone. Jian Chen quickly came to a conclusion with a small wave of happiness. At first, he had thought that he had died. He had not expected to live after falling down the cliff. The Harito clan and the other clans that attacked me in Phoenix City. I, Jian Chen, will not forgive this. The memories continued to flow into Jian Chen's head as a furious hatred empowered the glow in his eyes. Both of his hands clenched tightly as he repeated the names and committed them to heart. As Jian Chen stretched his body, a wave of pain came coursing through his body and he couldn't help but let out a small grunt of pain before turning pale. As the pain passed, Jian Chen took in a deep breath. As he lay on the bed, he focused on his body and realized he was only wearing some simple clothing. Other than that, he could also feel that all of his wounds on his body had been bandaged up. Then Jian Chen's eyes landed on his waist and came to a startling realization. His space belt was missing. Where is my space belt? Jian Chen began to panic a bit.
All of his belongings, including the Bai clan heirloom given to him by his mother and the space ring given to him by his father, were inside it. He also had tens of thousands of purple coins stored within his space belt. If he were to lose his space belt, then his life would be gone as well. Plus, the space belt also had his Class 4 and Class 5 monster cores. Those were the most crucial things for his cultivation. Jian Chen's panicked eyes spread all over the room as he tried to scan for his space belt. However, he was only greeted with disappointment as he couldn't find a single trace of the space belt. Before he could think any further about his space belt, a pair of footsteps could be heard walking toward his room. The wooden door slid open as a short pants-wearing man walked in. The man had a simple look to him that made him seem rather average. As the middle-aged man strode into the room, he looked at the awake Jian Chen with a smile. You've finally awakened. You've been asleep for 2 whole nights. If it weren't for the fact that you were still breathing, I would have thought you were dead. Jian Chen looked at the man and asked, Where is my space belt? Seeing the frantic expression on Jian Chen's face, the man laughed gently before walking to the adjacent side of the room where a cupboard was. Reaching out to open it, he took out an ordinary-looking space belt and walked back to Jian Chen. Your space belt is right here. Youngster, don't worry, I have not touched your items at all. He then slid the space belt toward him. Taking the space belt back, Jian Chen immediately looked over his things before realizing his more important things hadn't been touched and sighed in relief. Looking back to the man, Jian Chen had a softer expression as he spoke. Are you the one that rescued me? The man sat down on a stool by Jian Chen's bed and laughed. 2 days ago, I went to the river to fish, only to see your bloody body float on by. Since you weren't dead, I just had to bring you back. This one thanks you for saving me. Jian Chen had an extremely grateful look as he spoke with pure honesty. The man nodded his head. No need to thank me, youngster. You truly have a tremendous willpower. Seeing the heavy wounds on you, I surely thought you would be dead. The wound on your back itself was so deep that the bones could be seen. I've lived a long life, but I have never seen such an injury on a person still breathing. Ah yes, youngster, you've been asleep for 2 whole days. You must be hungry. Let me go get you some food to eat. The man spoke out. Jian Chen nodded his head. Then I'll be counting on uncle. After 2 whole days of abstaining from food, Jian Chen was rather hungry. After that, the man handed Jian Chen a bowl of rice with a side dish of meat. After eating, the hunger in Jian Chen's stomach was satisfied. Still he felt tired, so the man left him to sleep. After the man left, Jian Chen closed his eyes and slowly tried to regain the spirit that he had used up. When he was chased by the elder, Jian Chen's spirit sword had taken up an extreme amount of his spirit. Although he had 2 days to rest, Jian Chen had only recovered a minimal amount. It was nothing major at all. Right now, he needed to recover an optimal state of spirit before he could use the Light Saint Force to heal. As Jian Chen recovered his spirit, the man came to visit a few times. However, when Jian Chen slept, he disturbed him no more. Quickly, night came as Jian Chen lay in that bed for over 4 hours without moving at all. Until the next morning, Jian Chen could only close his eyes and try his best to recover his spirit.
After an entire night of recovering, the amount of spirit he had recovered was about 80% of normal.
However, with the wounds he had received 2 days prior, if he had not those days of warm temperature and safety, it would have been extremely hard to recover so much spirit at such an optimal pace.
After that, Jian Chen began to use the Light Saint Force to heal his wounds. Chapter 196. Roscoe. The strong milky white light of the Light Saint Force enveloped Jian Chen's entire body as its strange glow slowly entered his body. As of that moment, the flesh all over his body was being mended. Because it was daytime, the light of the Light Saint Force was rather hard to see. So Jian Chen wasn't afraid that his secret usage of the Light Saint Force would be leaked. Even if someone were to come by, Jian Chen would be instantly notified by their presence to stop the flow of Light Saint Force. By now, Jian Chen's spirit had been fully recovered, so when he began to control the Light Saint Force, the amount of time he could control it would definitely be long, and the quality of the Light Saint Force would be rich. By the time 2 hours had passed, Jian Chen was almost fully healed. However, using the Light Saint Force still came at a price. Since he still wasn't in prime condition, using the Light Saint Force made him feel rather dizzy and he had the constant feeling of wanting to sleep. Jian Chen continued to heal himself for the entire day. Waking up again on the second morning, Jian Chen lay in the warmth of the bed to hide his condition. After all, the man who saved him 2 days ago saw how seriously injured Jian Chen was. If he were to find out his current condition, then the nature of Jian Chen's Light Saint Force would definitely be revealed to him. Even with the help of medication, a serious wound like the one Jian Chen had received would definitely take longer than 2 days to heal. For that reason, Jian Chen refused to get off the bed and hid his body underneath the covers. As long as he kept his secret hidden, then no problems would occur. He knew that Radiant Saint Masters were rare within the Tianyuan continent. If this secret was revealed, then he would be constantly troubled by people. Laying in the bed, Jian Chen silently healed with the use of his Light Saint Force. For the past 2 days the man had given him some herbs to help heal him, but currently, he was all out of Saint Force. The sword within his dantian had been reduced to a darker version as well. Quickly, the afternoon came and Jian Chen could smell the fragrant scent of a meal wafting into the room. Creak! At that moment, the wooden door to the room slid open and the middle-aged man walked into the room, stopping only by the bed. Seeing the shut-eyed Jian Chen, the man let out a breath of air and muttered, "AI, he's been asleep for another 2 days without waking up to eat even once. Even with injuries this severe, I'm not too sure how long he'll last. It's truly unfortunate that this poor village isn't able to find any stronger medication." The man shook his head helplessly before walking back out of the room. "Uncle!" Suddenly, a weak-sounding voice called out from behind. The man went rigid before whirling around to look at Jian Chen and called out joyfully, "Kid, you've finally awakened. After falling unconscious again, I was afraid you'd never wake up again." Hearing that, Jian Chen smiled. "This one is sorry, I've let Uncle worry." "No worries, as long as you are awake, everything is fine. At the very least your life is still well and safe." "That's right. You haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm sure you're hungry. Let me bring you something to eat." With that, the man turned and walked out of the room once more. Quickly, a hot bowl of rice with a plate of meat was presented by the man. "We are only in a small mountainside village, so the best we can normally get is the meat of the wild beasts we find in the mountains. Since you're injured, it's best for you to eat some meat to properly heal your body." "This one thanks Uncle greatly." Jian Chen slowly climbed up from the bed. Upon seeing his movements, the man instantly started, "Hey! Don't move! You're injured and moving will only make it worse." With that, his hands put down the meal on the table and went over to support Jian Chen. Jian Chen smiled. "Although I am injured, after 2 days of resting, my health has been stabilized. Moving just a little bit is no problem now." Seeing how Jian Chen didn't have a problem sitting upright slowly, the man had a look of admiration on his face. "Youngster, your strength is surely that of a decent standing to be able to sit up so soon after such a grievous wound." Jian Chen looked at the man with a deep look. "Uncle, it would appear that you are quite strange yourself. I assume you once traveled the continent before as well?" "AI." The man let out a breath of air as if Jian Chen's words had struck a heavy blow. His face had taken on a sad expression. After a moment of silence, the man spoke once more. "To be truthful, 10 years ago, I too was a mercenary at the middle Saint Master level. I traveled with a few brothers that suffered fire and rain with me, but one day while transporting some precious cargo, we encountered a bandit group that changed my life forever. That group of bandits was truly strong. After a fierce battle we drove off the bandits, but our side had paid a heavy price. My saint weapon had been destroyed by a stronger bandit, and although I didn't die, I had lost my ability to cultivate and the entirety of my strength. I was nothing more than a cripple. Thus, I came to this village to isolate myself from the world. Hearing that, Jian Chen went silent as well. He could fully understand the emotions within the man's heart. To go from a mercenary that traveled the Tianyuan continent to becoming a cripple that couldn't cultivate, this was a cruel torment that even the most ambitious would rather die than to live and suffer. With that, Jian Chen continued to chat with the man while eating. As they talked, Jian Chen learned of the man's name, Roscoe. Roscoe was about 40 years old this year. Ever since he had his saint weapon shattered and became a cripple, he arrived at the village and married himself to a woman of a close-by village. They then gave birth to a son and daughter who were both 10 years old. After that, Jian Chen had come to live temporarily within their house. However, he didn't mention that his wounds were now completely healed, so he lay in bed for the entire day. Roscoe would leave him be, letting him rest for the most part. Though in secret, Jian Chen would sit upright and continue to refine his saint force. Although Jian Chen had spent many days refining his saint force in Phoenix City, he still hadn't completely gotten rid of the side effects from using the monster cores to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, Jian Chen had been a resident of the village for half a month. In that half-month, Roscoe had grown to respect Jian Chen and would often let him rest except to bring him a meal 2 or 3 times a day. Chapter 197. Small Mountain Village. 10 days later, Jian Chen could finally leave his bed and stand on the ground. Looking down to observe the clothing he had been wearing, he noticed that this had to be what Roscoe normally wore, as it was rather big on Jian Chen. Taking out a new set of clothing from within his space belt, he removed Roscoe's old clothing and immediately put on the new set. Then with a dumbfounded expression, he had finally realized something had happened to his skin. His normally pale skin was no longer white anymore. It had once more turned a red-colored like when the 1000 immunity had first advanced a step. It was a strange sight to behold. Seeing the color of his skin, Jian Chen was still for a moment. With such a strange sight like this, even after experiencing it once for a brief moment, Jian Chen was still confused. After that, Jian Chen shook himself awake and thought about all relevant information he had obtained. The anti-venom from the silver-striped golden snake should only turn my skin red again for a moment after it finally fuses together. Could it be that while I was resting for these 10 days, the 1000 immunity finally reached a perfected state? Jian Chen thought to himself with some happiness. From the time he had absorbed the anti-venom from the blood of the silver-striped golden snake until now, a year had passed. His 1000 immunity had finally reached a perfected state. Right now was the moment he could finally say he had the 1000 immunity. From this moment on, I no longer have to fear any other venomous toxin I might come across as long as it doesn't outrank the silver-striped golden snake in toxicity. Jian Chen thought happily. Throughout the entire area of the Tianyuan continent, the toxin of the silver-striped golden snake could be regarded as one of the most poisonous. Everyone knew how toxic it was in nature, and there weren't many other toxins that could beat it and thus were even rarer to come across. According to the books, after reaching a perfected state, the 1000 immunity will turn the skin red for a month before returning back to its original skin color. But the books didn't say that my skin would become this red. Jian Chen muttered to himself. It was a shame that he didn't have a mirror, otherwise he would have been able to see how red his face had become. After changing into a new set of clothes from his space belt, Jian Chen folded the clothes from Roscoe and placed them on the side of the bed before walking out. With a creaking noise, Jian Chen slid open the old-fashioned door to see a good amount of sunlight splash into the room, illuminating it decently. At the moment the sun was already at its highest point in the sky, meaning it was noon. Outside the room was a small courtyard that had plenty of cobweb-like cracks running through the dirt ground. Just diagonally across from Jian Chen were some wooden houses, and even another run-down shack some distance away. Under the sun, a few young children were running around and laughing while they played. Exiting the wooden house that had housed him for half a month, Jian Chen had finally seen what this place looked like. It was a small village by the mountains that had more houses than the eye could see, but the residents themselves could not be seen. Roscoe, today's harvest has been quite good. It's still only afternoon and we've already caught 2 wild beasts. This will be enough to feed our entire village for a few days. Right, it seems we won't need to go hunting tomorrow. We'll be able to eat and be merry for 2 days at the least to relax. If our luck in the future is as good as our fortune today, then our future will surely be quite comfortable. The sounds of 2 people chattering reached Jian Chen's ears, who turned to look at the speakers, only to see Roscoe and a few other limber-looking people walking from some distance away. Above the shoulders of 2 men was the carcass of a giant wild beast. Just looking at one of these beasts could show that they weighed 100 kilograms at the very least. At this moment, Roscoe had realized that Jian Chen was standing in front of them. With a faraway shout, he greeted him, "Hey, youngster. Have your wounds healed properly enough for you to walk?" Jian Chen smiled and said, "This one thanks uncle for his concern. After applying so much good medicine these past few days, my wounds have nearly completely recovered." Roscoe's companions finally looked at Jian Chen for a moment before a person smiled. "Roscoe, I've heard that some time ago you saved a man from the river. Could this be the person you saved?" Roscoe nodded his head with a smile. Quickly, the men had all arrived next to Jian Chen as Roscoe pointed his finger at Jian Chen. "This little brother here is Jian Chen. Although his age is quite young, you shouldn't underestimate him at all. His life was almost taken from him. With wounds that serious, I had believed that he would die. I didn't think that just after a few days, he would be standing right in front of us fully healed. This is something even I wouldn't be able to do." "Oh, is that right? This little brother here doesn't seem that amazing." Hearing that, the few men all opened their mouths to laugh, but it was all in good nature. Roscoe looked to Jian Chen. "Little brother, let me introduce you to everyone. This man right here is Fang Yungang. The man here is Cheng Li Ran, and the one there is called Qiu Chujie." Jian Chen smiled as he cupped his hands in a sign of greeting toward these newly introduced men. "You've returned? It would appear your harvests today were quite good to have 2 wild beasts hunted in such a short time." At this, a womanly voice called out from behind as a simple-clothed woman with a rather ordinary-looking face walked out from one of the homes. "Little brother, come. Let me introduce you for a moment." Roscoe patted Jian Chen's shoulder as he pointed at the middle-aged woman coming at them. "This is my wife, Fang Hui. This one welcomes you, elder sister." Jian Chen greeted her with respect. This was the first time Jian Chen had seen what Roscoe's wife had looked like. Even after half a month of staying in their home, he had only been able to hear what she had sounded like. Fang Hui looked at Jian Chen's face and smiled. "What a handsome youth. I've long known about the youth Roscoe rescued, but this is the first time I've actually seen you. I didn't think that you'd be such a handsome youth. But why is your face so red?" "Ah, that's right. Little brother, for the past few days I've noticed that your face was getting redder and redder. Are you sure you're all right? Have your injuries given you some sort of illness?" Roscoe asked with concern. "Don't worry, uncle. This must be the after effects of the medicine I used. I'll be fine." Jian Chen waved off Roscoe's concern. "Ah, that's good then." Roscoe calmed himself before continuing to speak. "Now's about the time to eat. Little brother, since you've healed up nicely, why don't you come eat with us?" Chapter 198. A promotion in strength within a nicely cleaned wooden house. Jian Chen sat with Roscoe's family around a wooden table to eat lunch. The food was rather simple. A few plates of vegetables and a big plate of wild beast meat. Roscoe had a family of 4, him, his wife and their 2 children, who were both around 10 years old. At the dining table, Roscoe and his wife continued to chat with Jian Chen, while never mentioning the topic of how Jian Chen came to be injured. Instead, they only talked about what interesting events had occurred within the Tianyuan continent. The continent was relatively dangerous. Roscoe's wife Fang Hui had grown up in the village and never once left it. Despite once being a mercenary, when his saint weapon had been shattered turning him into a cripple, Roscoe had lived in seclusion in this village for the rest of his life. From that moment, he had never ventured outside the village and so never heard anything new about the outside world. Jian Chen had only traveled the Tianyuan continent for 1 or 2 years, and he had mainly lived in the more isolated cities and towns. However, he was able to answer the majority of the questions Roscoe and his wife had while also managing to answer the occasional questions from the children. After the meal, Roscoe led Jian Chen around the village for a small tour to introduce him to the village people and get familiarized with the history of the village. This village was once called the Huang village with a history of over 100 years. 100 years ago, a family with the surname of Huang established this village with only a few settlers. Even though it had around 100 years to develop itself, it had never gone beyond 30 families. The total population remained around 100 people, and aside from the elderly, children and the wives, there were only around 30 to 40 strong, robust men. This village had worked to survive by farming the lands, while occasionally a strong young man would hunt in the forests to kill a few wild beasts or fish for food in the river. Other than that, the village would isolate itself from the outside affairs of the world. In a single afternoon, Roscoe had led Jian Chen around the entire village and introduced him to almost everyone in the village before calling it a day. At night, Roscoe brought Jian Chen back to the house and the 5 people sat down at the table once more to eat dinner. Like lunch, the dinner was relatively simple with a big bowl of rice and some vegetables. At one point during the dinner, the little boy sitting next to Jian Chen lifted his head and spoke shyly. "Brother Jian Chen, I heard father say that you are really amazing."
Listening to her brother speak, the little girl right next to Feng Hui lifted her head as well with her black eyes brimming with curiosity.
This little boy was called Roger, and the girl's name was Rogue. These two were the children of Roscoe and Feng Hui. Hearing this, Jian Chen's eyes fell upon the child and laughed. "Little Roger, the outside world is vast and there are many more amazing people than your brother Jian Chen. When you grow older and stronger, Roger, you should head out to the outside world and see it for yourself." Then brother Jian Chen, against daddy, who is stronger? Hearing Jian Chen's answer, Roscoe's daughter Rogue couldn't help but ask with curiosity. Roscoe began to laugh before turning to look at his daughter. "Rogue, don't look down on brother Jian Chen. Although he is much younger than your father, he is much more amazing than me." Roscoe's wife, Feng Hui, suddenly gained a shine in her eyes as she said, "Jian Chen, if you don't mind our impoverished lives here, why don't you live here with us? The Tianyuan continent is dangerous, but the village here is very peaceful and safe. One of these days, I can even help introduce you to a pretty lady in the following village." Jian Chen gave a small smile as he thought about Feng Hui's words with a secretive thought of disapproval. "This one thanks elder sister's idea, but I still have things to do in the outside world. So for that reason, this one won't stay here longer than necessary," he replied with a bitter smile. "That's fine. Every young man has things they need to do. For a youngster like Jian Chen, they should travel the continent a little longer and enjoy the world. Don't walk blindly in an area like this." Roscoe spoke to Jian Chen. He had traveled the world as a mercenary himself, so he knew how Jian Chen felt about this idea. Feng Hui glared at Roscoe with a disappointed look. In her mind, if she could find a nice lady to have Jian Chen married to, he would stay behind in this village and thus help the other men of the village go hunting. This way, a healthy harvest would be guaranteed. After dinner, Jian Chen returned to his little room to rest for the day. This room was originally intended to store away junk, but with Jian Chen occupying the room temporarily, Roscoe had cleaned out the room. For the sake of letting Jian Chen rest, Roscoe had placed a bed in it. Closing the door to his room, Jian Chen sat cross-legged on his bed and took out a few Class 3 monster cores from within his space belt to cultivate. Before the half-month of rest, Jian Chen had done his best to remove any of the hidden dangers in his body.
After that, he was now once again free to try to improve his strength without needing to worry about increasing his strength far too fast or that the berserk elements from the monster cores adding to the hidden dangers.
Jian Chen continued to absorb the energy from within the monster cores at a terrifying speed.
The moment it entered his body, the berserk elements within the energy stream were immediately absorbed into the cyan and purple glows within his dantian along with a good amount of the energy. Perhaps it was because Jian Chen was taking the energy within the monster core at an even faster and more efficient rate than before, but the dantian was also absorbing the energy at a larger rate than before as well.
At the current moment, Jian Chen could take in about 10 to 20% of the total energy within the monster core, compared to the past 1% when he was a regular saint. Right now, Jian Chen urgently wanted to improve his strength so that it would reach that of the great saint master level. For the next couple of days, Jian Chen didn't leave his room and continued to cultivate. Though he would leave to eat meals every 2 or 3 days with the family, since he was a saint master now he didn't need to eat every day like the average person. Chapter 199. Another breakthrough in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen had spent at least an entire month in Huang Village. In that month, Jian Chen had rarely walked out from his room, choosing to spend the entire day within his room to cultivate in peace. Every 2 or 3 days, sometimes every 4 days, he would eat some meals with the family. But other than that, He remained indoors and after finishing his meal, he continued his cultivation.
Heading out into the village itself was even more rare.
After spending half of the month in cultivation, Jian Chen's Saint Force had been readily increasing in strength at the expense of going through multiple monster cores quickly.
However, he still had an ample sum of Class 3 and 4 monster cores along with the monster cores from the space belts of the great Saint Masters he killed back in Phoenix City.
With so many monster cores, he wasn't afraid of running out of them. There were still 2 Class 5 monster cores within his space ring as well, which were better than over 100 Class 4 monster cores. This large amount of monster cores would definitely help bring him to the great Saint Master realm. Right now, Jian Chen was at the very peak of the peak Saint Master level. The only thing preventing him from making it to the great Saint Master level was a frail boundary. At this final juncture, Jian Chen didn't dare to stop cultivating.
Opening his eyelids, there was a calm look in his eyes with only a small tint of emotions.
It would only take another month before he could break through. It was a shame that the hidden dangers in his body before had delayed his breakthrough. As soon as he broke through to the great Saint Master level, taking revenge on the Qianxiong clan in Wake City would be possible. Taking in a deep breath, Jian Chen calmed his body and took out another dozen Class 4 monster cores from within his space belt and placed them between his legs for his cultivation needs. Because he was at a critical point before the breakthrough, the amount of energy he needed was absolutely massive. At the same time, he wouldn't have time to constantly take out monster core by monster core from his space belt, so he would need to have a large amount of them on hand. With all preparations done, Jian Chen held a Class 4 monster core in each of his hands as he closed his eyes and entered a state of meditation. Closing his eyes, another day again passed for Jian Chen. The next afternoon, Roscoe sat with his wife and children at the table eating lunch. This Jian Chen is far too hard working at his cultivation. It has been half a month already, and he only comes out every 3 days or so to eat a meal. I don't know how he has managed to endure this, but it's been 4 days this time and he hasn't stepped out of his room even once. I'm worried he worked himself into an illness. Feng Hui looked at the closed door to Jian Chen's room with a look of worry on her face. Roscoe laughed at her words. Feng Er, you've never come into contact with Saint Force, but it is an incredible yet mysterious force. Jian Chen is at the very least 100 times more hard-working than me, but he still won't work himself into an illness. As for not eating, that doesn't need to be said either. On the Tianyuan continent, the stronger experts could go 10 days without eating a meal with no problem.
I myself would occasionally go without a meal with my comrades for 5 days, and still be able to fend off the bandits with the ferocity of a dragon and the vitality of a tiger.
Feng Hui stuck her nose up in disdain. You are you, and Jian Chen is Jian Chen. Don't forget that time was when you were 30 years old. Jian Chen is only a 20-year-old youth with a physically weaker body. In what way can his body compare to your stature at that time? Roscoe let out a sigh and replied, Feng Er, you've never walked the continent, so you won't know how this works. Let me explain this to you. A person's strength is not determined by how old a person is.
A few men with talent but no hard work could condense their saint force into a saint weapon after a lifetime, and a few men with the talent and even the resources may never be able to reach a high level.
Take our Huang village for example. After over 100 years, the strongest person in the village has only been a great saint at the most.
Many of the academies within the Tianyuan continent have standards in which a great saint is the minimal level for graduation at the very least. There's even many men that aren't even at the age of 30 that have the same level of strength as our village head.
Feng Hui nodded her head as if she understood. Although what you say seems right, Jian Chen's strength can't be said for certain. He is still far too young. Just as Roscoe was about to open his mouth to explain once more to Feng Hui, a strong gale suddenly flew out from Jian Chen's room, causing dirt to fly everywhere, including the food on the table.
Crap! How could there suddenly be a large gust of wind?
Roscoe cried out before bounding to the door to close it. Woo! Woo, Dad, Mom, my eyes has dirt in it, I can't see. Rogue buried her face in her hands and began to cry out with tears. Feng Hui hurried on over to where Rogue was and began to comfort her. Hush, don't cry, your mother is here. Let mother help you clean out your eyes. Open them slowly for me. Roscoe looked back to the table where all of the dishes were now filled with dirt with some confusion before speaking seriously to his family. You should all stay here. I'll go and check. This gale was far too sudden. This must be an omen for danger. Rapidly opening and closing the door, Roscoe headed out. Outside, the sudden gale had caused trouble everywhere.
Dust flew around the sky and covered it so that the fierce sun above it could barely shine down below with the exception of a few weak rays of light. Some of the clothes that were hung outside to dry had been sent flying into the air and fluttered away. Even the tiles on the roofs had been lifted by a small degree, while some of the older huts had been completely demolished by the gale. What happened? Why was there a great gale all of a sudden? What a strange wind this was, to come so suddenly and yet so fiercely. From a distance, the Huang village men were all coming out of their houses with confusion.
Roscoe looked around before his eyes landed upon the little room Jian Chen was cultivating in.
His eyes narrowed as he realized that the dust had all blown out from the direction of his room.
After traveling the continent for many years, Roscoe had learned to deduce things quickly thanks to his experience as a Saint Master. His eyes grew wider as he began to think about what could have caused the gale of wind. Could this be the result of Jian Chen's cultivation? The thought of that had caused Roscoe's heart to waver. He knew what could have possibly happened to bring about such a result. 10 years ago when he was a Saint Master, he had experienced this before on a smaller scale. He couldn't believe that Jian Chen would have long since surpassed him in such a way. What a mistake in judgment, to think that such a youngster would be far past the Saint Master realm. He has to be at the great Saint Master realm by now, Roscoe thought. Even though he was a cripple, his experience was far more than enough to understand what Jian Chen had just done. Look everyone, the wind's coming from that direction. An elderly voice called out as everyone looked at the direction of the finger the elder was pointing at. Hearing this, everyone studied the direction that had been pointed out before realizing it was the house of Jian Chen. The village elder is right, the wind is coming from that direction. Just look, the smoke is spreading out from over there. Let's go quickly then. Right, let's find out what's happening. In the end, a group of people had headed toward the area of Jian Chen's room. Instantly realizing what was happening, Roscoe hurried forward to block them. Village elder, it's best if we go elsewhere for now to avoid disturbing Jian Chen. Roscoe, just what exactly is going on here? I can see that this gale is coming from here. The village elder asked Roscoe with some confusion. His elderly face was filled with a serious expression. That's right. Roscoe, just what is happening within that room? Are you hiding some sort of treasure? The village elder asked once more. Right, Roscoe, you best be honest here. If you have a treasure, you should show it to the rest of us. Hurry up and let everyone see this treasure. I've never seen anything that could cause such a wind. As each person joined in, everyone else wanted to look at what treasure was hidden within the room. Their voices each crying out over one another. Shoo! Everyone be quiet. Roscoe couldn't help but to try to quiet them down. Please, don't misunderstand me, everyone. I don't have any sort of treasure hidden away. This is the result of that youth Jian Chen's cultivation. This was something I came to understand after my experience of being a traveler of the Tianyuan continent. This has to be the result of Jian Chen's cultivation almost reaching a breakthrough. This current moment has to be the most critical point, so if he is disturbed, then a disastrous result might happen for Jian Chen. Come now, let's all walk away from this area so we won't disturb Jian Chen's cultivation. Oh, so it was like that? No way, I've seen that Jian Chen before, but I didn't think him to be that amazing to be able to call down the winds like that. Roscoe, are you trying to trick us? The crowd murmured in confusion. They were people of the village and had never once traveled out to the Tianyuan continent. So many of the people there were very suspicious of Roscoe's attitude. They couldn't believe that a youth like Jian Chen would be capable of having such strength. To them, this was a mystery that deserved some research. The village elder looked at the room Jian Chen resided in with a look of shock before taking in a deep breath. Everyone, what Roscoe said does have some merit. But whether or not his words are true, we'll find out soon enough. Let us wait for now and avoid disturbing Jian Chen. The village elder's words had a very strong weight in everyone's eyes. His words were something many people didn't dare to go against. Silently, everyone began to walk back, no longer walking toward Jian Chen's location. The gale of wind continued to wreak havoc within a smaller range of a few hundred meters, which was still enough to cover the entire village. Everyone backed away another 50 meters and watched for a little longer. After a while, the elderly, children, and women all left and the middle-aged men stayed to observe the mysterious dust storm. Right now, there were about 100 people within Huang village. All of the able-bodied were left observing the area with a strange expression. The sight in front of them wasn't something that would attract attention in the Tianyuan continent usually, but for this village which was cut off from the rest of the world, this was especially strange. Why do I feel like my heart is feeling more and more painful? It's to the point where even breathing has become extremely difficult. An old man suddenly said in confusion as he reached out to massage his chest. Yeah, I also feel like my chest is stuffy, to the point where I'm becoming agitated. Moreover, I feel like I'm carrying something really heavy on my back. A middle-aged man chimed in. Me too. My chest feels so smothered, as if a large rock is exerting pressure on my chest. I can barely breathe. How strange. You guys are feeling this sensation too. I had thought it was only me who was feeling such a symptom. I also have this feeling. Me too. Hearing everyone talk, Roscoe's heart skipped a beat. Immediately realizing the situation, he cried out, "Everyone, get away. This is an invisible air that only an extremely strong person can emit. It can majorly affect all surrounding people. Some peak experts are even able to use this air to constrict people's airways and suffocate them to death." Everyone's expressions changed drastically, including the old village chiefs. All of them hurriedly retreated until they were 100 meters away. Although most of them didn't even know what this air was, they had clearly understood one thing. Some peak experts could use this air to directly suffocate a person to death. Pang! Just after everyone had retreated 100 meters, a loud sound suddenly rang out. The small wooden house that Jian Chen had been living in instantly shattered into scattered pieces. Then, a human figure broke through the roof, shooting up into the air like a bullet, and reaching a height of over 50 meters in the blink of an eye. Ah! Jian Chen floated about 50 meters in the air, and emitted a long whistle toward the sky. The sound resonated without restraint through the air, crossing over a vast distance. At the same time, powerful Saint Force surged and gathered in his left hand.
With a wave, a pure ball of light energy completely formed from Saint Force whizzed out of his hand and off toward the distant ground.
Bang! When the ball of light energy crashed into the ground, a large bang resonated through the air, and a great amount of smoke and dust began to rise. Only after it had dissipated were people shocked to discover that a 2 to 3 meter diameter hole around 5 meters deep had formed. The surge of Saint Force once again appeared, in Jian Chen's right hand this time. It quickly condensed into a silver sword that shot out piercing glows as it caught the sunlight, forcing people to look away. This sword seemed to be even more dazzling than the sun. In an instant the silver light flashed and died out. The sword had already pierced through the air as fast as lightning. A sharp amount sword chi along with dazzling light broke away from the sword's bonds, and quickly shot at the empty ground 100 meters off into the distance at lightning-fast speeds. It silently went through the solid rock, leaving only an extremely thin crack on the surface. There were absolutely no signs of cracks in any of the surrounding areas. After this attack pierced through, Jian Chen's body began to slowly descend to the ground. Although he could jump up 50 meters in a single bound, he was only able to stay floating in midair for a breath's time. Jian Chen landed on the ground with a trace of a faint smile on his face. It was a smile of self-confidence. After cultivating non-stop for over half a month, his strength had smoothly broken through from the peak Saint Master level to the Great Saint Master level. Chapter 200. Misfortune. 100 meters away, every single person within the village looked at Jian Chen with a look of utter shock. A loud cry rang out and spread a few kilometers in every direction as Jian Chen leaped 50 meters into the air before slamming his fist into the ground, causing a huge shockwave. Dirt flew out into the air as the group of villagers all watched this show with a sluggish expression as they tried to comprehend what was happening. It could be said without exaggeration that this display of strength was far beyond the knowledge of anyone here. They were after all people of a village that had never traveled the continent or come across any knowledge of how strong a saint had to be in order to cause such an effect. Even their village elder, who was a great saint, only knew of information from the outside world by word of mouth. To see Jian Chen leap 50 meters into the sky before bringing his fist down to create a 100-meter crater was definitely a first for him. At this moment, each villager's face was filled with looks of extreme shock yet also full of worship. There was a large amount of respect within their eyes mixed with their initial disbelief. Even though they had seen this terrifying event with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe what they were seeing. A single youth not even over the age of 20 had caused such a scene of destruction. Feeling the surge of Saint Force reverberating through him, Jian Chen's heart swelled with a large amount of confidence. With his current strength, although it still wasn't enough to defend himself completely against an Earth Saint Master, But against a group of great Saint Masters he wouldn't be forced to constantly run away and wouldn't have to use his spirit sword as his last resort. Jian Chen looked at the light wind sword in his right hand. After his ascension from the Saint Master level, he could clearly tell that his light wind sword had also undergone some changes. His current sword looked to be even shinier than before. The blade was almost similar to the speckless reflection of a mirror that distributed a white glow of brilliant light. The sword glow that appeared over his sword didn't seem like anything too remarkable at first, but the glow alone could split stone and smash metal with a power unimaginable to anyone. Aside from that, the light wind sword's hardness had been vastly improved as well. Jian Chen was confident that his strength was utterly different from when he was a Saint Master. Whoever wanted to break the 2-finger-wide sword of his would find it an extremely daunting task. Slowly resorbing the sword back into his body, Jian Chen looked around himself only to see the broken room he had left behind. With a bitter look on his face, he slowly walked over to Roscoe, who was 100 meters away, and spoke with some regret. "Uncle, this one is truly sorry. I've destroyed the room you lent me." Despite Roscoe being utterly shocked at Jian Chen's strength in his heart, he was an experienced mercenary, so he quickly stilled his emotions. Slapping Jian Chen on the shoulder, he laughed. "Don't worry about it. It's nothing more than just a room. All we need is some time and it can be rebuilt. Kid, I've really made a serious mistake here. I didn't think that you would be so strong since you look to be so young. I truly am extremely shocked." Roscoe spoke with some excitement in his voice. "Haha, little brother Jian Chen is too polite. It is merely a small room. In 6 hours or so a new one can be built. But the power brother Jian Chen has just revealed has truly opened our eyes. Everyone, don't you think so as well?" The village elder laughed with a kind expression. "Yes, that's right." Following the village elder's words, every villager behind him began to speak out with adoration and respect. "AI." At that moment, the village elder let out a strange sound before looking closely at Jian Chen's face before asking curiously, "Little brother Jian Chen, why is it that your face is white? I remember a few days ago, your face was red." Rushing to come up with an answer, Roscoe quickly said, "Haha, village elder, brother Jian Chen's face had always been pale. A few days ago he had some medicine applied to his body that turned his face red." The village elder nodded his head in understanding before laughing. That's good, that's good. White is a better color on a face than red. I didn't think that little brother Jian Chen here would be so strong. Not only that, but to be so handsome as well. With an appearance like this, you could cause all of the women nearby to go crazy over you." Everyone burst out into laughter as they all thought about the elder's words in approval. There was no doubt to them. Jian Chen himself had a small smile. The elder's words had caused him to be speechless. All of a sudden at that moment, an unexpected change went through Jian Chen's face as his body began to shake violently as a tremendous amount of energy burst out from his body uncontrollably. Staggering back a few steps, he then leaped a few meters away. At the same time, Jian Chen's handsome and pale face began to turn violet and then a shade of azure. Even his eyes had begun to display the 2 colors behind the thin layer of his cornea. Roscoe had been pushed back around 20 meters away from the energy Jian Chen had unleashed before slowly stabilizing himself. Slowly turning his head to look at Jian Chen, he immediately realized the state he was in. With concern he asked quickly, "Kid, what's wrong?" Jian Chen's entire body continued to shake and tremble as his eyes continued to flash in between the 2 colors of violet and azure. "Go get BA back. Everyone. Get far away from me. Don't get close." Jian Chen spat out with some difficulty before sitting down and closing his eyes. "What's wrong? What's wrong with brother Jian Chen? Did something go wrong with his cultivation? What happened to brother Jian Chen?" The group of villagers scrambled to get away as they noisily clamored. They also looked with confusion at the seated Jian Chen. Roscoe's face was full of confusion as well. He had been a Saint Master in his prime before his Saint weapon broke and turned him into a cripple. So after seeing what state Jian Chen had been in, he came to realize what problem had come across Jian Chen's cultivation. "Get back. We all need to get back for now. Until the kid wakes up, we should all stay quiet for now to avoid disturbing him." Roscoe whispered to the rest before guiding them backward. Chapter 201. The sword spirits of the azure and violet swords highlight above for chapter title. Jian Chen continued to sit down with his eyes closed as his body trembled. Inside his dantian, It was almost as if there was a giant earthquake violently shaking the place. The violet and azure glows continued to flicker wildly and send their light throughout the entire dantian. Floating in middle of the dantian, even the light wind sword had been affected and was shaking uncontrollably. The first time he had seen the violet and azure glow in his dantian was back in Kargath Academy when he first condensed his saint weapon. At this moment, the two glows of light were releasing a brilliant luster while coiling around each other in the shape and manner of the yin-yang symbol. Feeling the change within his body, Jian Chen's elation from becoming a great saint master had begun to die down. For the first time since taking residency in his dantian, the twin glows were finally causing him trouble once more. Although the matter of the problem in his dantian had caught Jian Chen off guard, he was not too frantic. From this morning, he had long anticipated that something would happen, so he had made preparations in advance. The violet and azure glows in his dantian continued to coil around each other like the yin-yang symbol endlessly. Even the floating saint weapon within his dantian felt as if it was slowly trying to break away from the invisible bindings that bound it to Jian Chen. At the same time, Jian Chen could faintly feel that the twin glows of violet and azure were feeling some sort of excitement within his head. This sensation had left Jian Chen in disbelief and confusion. There was confusion within Jian Chen's thoughts. Just what could have happened to his dantian in order for him to feel such a strange emotion? This has only happened once, back when he had come across the strange white stone back in Wake City. This feeling was rather fierce and Jian Chen also thought that it seemed very deep. Although his mind was baffled, Jian Chen simply didn't have any time to sit around and ponder. From his seated position, he began to try to suppress his saint weapon that was trying to remove his control over it. As of right now, he was completely powerless to do anything else but try to restrain the objects within his dantian. Because of the rebellion of his dantian, Jian Chen had no other choice but to try to withstand it. While sitting, he had begun to pray that the effects would not be too disastrous. The two glows within his dantian began to spin faster and faster as the glows began to emit an even stronger light. In the end, the fierce light from the glows ultimately speared through his body and were sent flying outside. Right now, Jian Chen's entire body was basked in the rich glow of violet and azure light. The twin lights spread out 30 meters away from him as the fierce glows lit up the sky above, completely eclipsing the color of the normal skylight. Hey, look! Jian Chen's body is glowing. How strange! How is there light coming from his body? Could he have made a miracle somehow while cultivating? Seeing the current condition of Jian Chen's body, every villager there opened their eyes in shock. Each person pointed at Jian Chen as they talked. This sight was something that not a single person had ever witnessed before. Then the twin lights within Jian Chen's dantian flew out completely from his body, bringing about a torrent of light as they flashed through Jian Chen's chest. Crap! Jian Chen's face became shocked. However, the violet and azure light were far too fast for him. The very moment he had become aware of the lights' movement, they had already disappeared from his dantian and passed through his body. Bang! Jian Chen could only hear a boom ring through his head as it began to spin uncontrollably. Even his own vision had begun to blur as if he were on the verge of losing consciousness. In the depths of his mind, Jian Chen felt as if he had arrived in a strange new world. An endless chain of mountains spread out far beyond what his eyes could perceive from the enchanting scenery. The amount of world essence was incomparably abundant and flowed along with the coiling dragon-like river through the mountains. Even the trees near the river were growing in abundance as each tree covered the sky with their canopy. The vision was the picture-perfect scene of a land of paradise. At that moment, a violet and azure-colored light shot through the sky like a falling star, leaving a trail of dazzling light. The speed it was traveling at covered countless miles in a single second. The lights were still twisting and coiling around each other as if they were lovers in the sky. In the midst of the violet and azure light, the faint outline of two mysterious swords could be seen. One was a violet color and the other was an azure color. Ziying sword, Qing Sua sword. Upon seeing these two spiritual swords, Jian Chen somehow instantly exclaimed the names of the swords. From this strange world Jian Chen was in, he could feel a major difference in his body on the outside. His body continued to emit the two violet and azure glows of light, before forming the two swords 10 meters above his head. From far away, it was almost as if two incomparably large swords had stabbed into Jian Chen's head. At the same time, a strong amount of sword aura condensed outside of his body and covered the sky, yet it was also transparent enough to look like a cloud. 100 meters away, the villagers were all looking sluggish once more. No one dared to blink and instead stared at the violet and azure-colored spiritual swords above his head. To the villagers, this sight was far too mystical. A far distance away from Huang village in a large palace, a crane-haired elder floated 3 meters above the ground in a sitting position with his eyes closed. At this moment, the elder suddenly opened his eyes in a single instant. 2 mysterious glows of light flashed outward as if penetrating the space in front of him with a chilling stare. As if he could see through the building he was in, his eyes stared out at the outside scene. What a strong qi! Just what is this, and why haven't I seen such a thing before? The elder furrowed his eyebrows as his mind raced with his thoughts. Could it be that somewhere, another peak expert has appeared? Within a small mountain village, a patched-robed elder suddenly lifted his head up from his farm fields and looked off in the direction of Huang village with a calm look. This is sword aura, an abnormally strong sword aura. Who could have reached such a pinnacle in the way of the sword and yet remain unknown to me? Could I have lived in seclusion for far too long in the Tianyuan continent to miss the arrival of a new expert? The elder murmured with some shock. At the same time, from every corner of the Tianyuan continent, many peak experts began to feel the unbelievably strong amount of sword aura with astonished looks. At Huang village, Jian Chen had already been sitting in his current position for 2 hours. Everyone in the village had already gathered 100 meters within the area, and were talking about the 2 violet and azure-colored swords above Jian Chen. Everyone look! There's movement! Suddenly, someone within the crowd cried out. Everyone turned to look only to see the violet and azure sword above Jian Chen's head gradually dim before completely disappearing from sight. Not too long after, Jian Chen slowly opened his shut eyes and had a look of utter disbelief on his face. Taking in another deep breath, Jian Chen slowly stood up. Although only 2 hours had passed, he had somehow managed to learn of many things during this time. After all this time, he had finally figured out the existence of the violet and azure lights in his dantian, a problem that he had been perplexed by ever since they first appeared. However, Jian Chen found the truth of the situation hard to believe. Even though it was something he had decided, he was still momentarily unable to accept it. Roscoe slowly approached Jian Chen after observing him from afar before speaking with concern. "Kid, are you fine now? What exactly made you so shocked?" Jian Chen slowly shook his head. "I'm fine, uncle, just a little tired. Could you possibly find me a spare room to sleep in for a moment?" Hearing Jian Chen's words, Roscoe let out a breath of air. At the very least, he had confirmed that Jian Chen wasn't injured in any noticeable way. "As long as you're fine, then that's no problem. I'll have the village prepare another room for you by the edge of the village, so no one will disturb you. It'll be peaceful as well. Come on now." After that, Roscoe brought Jian Chen to another house by the side of the village. Inside the house, there was no furniture at all, not even a bed. Declining Roscoe's suggestion of getting a bed, Jian Chen hurriedly thought of an excuse to have Roscoe leave along with the other people. The light within the room wasn't all that bright, but Jian Chen sat on the ground and began to digest the information he had learned today. After that miraculous display, Jian Chen had finally understood the meaning behind the violet and azure-colored lights. They were in fact the sword spirit of the deity swords, the Bziying sword and the Qing Suo sword. Both sword had the power to cause mass destruction. These 2 sword spirits were the equivalent to the primal state of chaos. From the leaking amount of yin-yang qi in the world, they had eventually evolved to finally attain a sentient form. Then after using the power of an immortal, they had gathered the richest amount of yin-yang qi to refine themselves into the violet and azure soul swords. Even after that, they took the endless amount of world essence and poured it into their own blood to fully refine the soul swords. After the completion of the swords, the world began to shake and the heavens started to rain thunder as if to announce the advent of these weapon deities. The parents of these 2 swords were basically the yin and yang itself along with the special ingredients used to make the sword. Therefore, these 2 swords came to be known as the yin-yang swords. Qing Suo as the yin and Ziying as the yang. These 2 swords were an absolute pair. When the violet and azure swords came together under one, then the yin and yang energy would flow together and would have an absolutely terrifying power of destruction. These swords were even rumored to be able to split the heavens and sunder the earth with a power like no other. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.